We're here today for the Veterans History Project. It's December 17th, 2023 in Cicero, New York with Mr. John Wilson. State your name, your full name with middle initial, and just give us an idea. Tell us where you were born.
Okay, I'm John W. Wilson, Jr., born in Syracuse, New York, November 2nd, 46.
Mm-hmm. And tell us, did you have, what were the names of your parents?
Parents was John Wilson, Sr., but everybody called him Jack, and my mother's name was Lucille Wilson.
Did you have siblings?
I had one younger brother, 10 years younger than me, Joseph Wilson.
Okay. And just a little bit about your family. Your family has been in this country for quite some time. Just go back just a little bit and tell us about that.
Well, my mother was born in Oswego, but her parents were from Italy. So they were immigrants from Italy back in 1900, whatever. But my father's family came here in 1850. His great-grandfather came from Dublin during the potato famine, and on one of the coffin ships, and landed in New York and settled outside of Syracuse and became a farmer. Mm-hmm. And that was 1850.
Okay, and in your ancestry, who else served before your time in our countries?
My great-great-grandfather was in the Civil War, was a farmer, lost half of his left arm in one of the last battles of the Civil War in 1865 outside of Petersburg. And my father was in the Army artillery just before the war ended, so he didn't see combat.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, very good. Tell us what was going on in your life as you were, a few years prior to your entry into the service. A little bit about where you lived locally here.
Okay. So I grew up on the south side of Syracuse, which now is quite dilapidated. And in fact, the house I grew up to was boarded up and probably should be bulldozed. And my father had lost his business when I was young, and he ended up selling new cars for a living, and he was quite successful at selling new cars. And my mother was just a housewife.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's move forward to when you're in high school. Tell us a little bit about that time. Now, Vietnam had started some time ago, late 50s, I believe. And what was going on at that point in your life? And just walk us into how you ended up in the service.
Well, I was in the 60s in high school, from 60 to 64. I graduated in 64 at 17 years old. And a few months before my 18th birthday, Central Tech High School, which had technical programs if you wanted to be a mechanical engineer or electrical engineer or nursing, like my future wife was in the nursing program, and in mechanical drawing, which I liked and I got into. And it was Central Tech High School, and we had a huge graduating class, 500 people in my graduating class. And it was an old building that should have been bulldozed 50 years before I came there. And I was a pretty good athlete and made all-city type athlete and stuff. And I thought I would go to college when I graduated, but that didn't work out. I ended up going to a local community college, and I did not like it, and dropped out and immediately got drafted. Not immediately, but I went to work after I dropped out after my freshman year. And would you like to hear about my jobs after? Sure. So I graduated 64 and was working at GE plant building television sets until I wanted to get in mechanical drawing, and I was lucky enough to get hired by a drafting firm that was working for General Electric doing defense projects here in Syracuse. And I got lucky enough to be put on the space flight simulator for the Apollo moon program. And I got a security clearance for that, and I was going on about my business. Now I'm 18, just turned 19, and enjoyed it. And that's when I got the draft notice.
Back then, if you were in college, you typically got a deferral, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So in this case, you were working and you had to go.
I was working, not married or with children, and back in May '66 is when I got drafted. It pretty much seemed if you were a warm male body and didn't have any of those caveats that you're going to get drafted.
Mm-hmm. What was the mood of the country at the time? Do you recall? There was a lot in the paper and whatnot, but what is your recollection of the public view?
My recollection was that they thought the war was going to end quickly, which we all know it certainly didn't, and that it was our country and we were all totally behind it. My best friend had joined the Army. He was a year ahead of me and was in the 1st Cav unit in Vietnam, and he used to send letters to me and such. And when he came back, he told me, he said, "Get in school fast because you don't want to go over there."
So he had experienced it. Yeah. For sure. Okay, so you're tell us about your entry. A little bit about when you left home. What'd your mom and dad have to say? That's often a very emotional time.
Okay, so May 19th, 7 a.m., 1966. Report at some offices in downtown Syracuse. My father drove me to the induction office that morning, and my father and I were very, very close. And I loved my father to death, and so he was very concerned about me going into the military, and especially at the time the Vietnam War was starting to kick up, and all the news on the TV and such was about the Vietnam was starting to get bad. So he wasn't happy. And as we pulled up in front of the induction office, I opened the door and we said our goodbyes, and he started weeping like a child. And I had never seen him weep before. And he knew better than I that we may never see each other again. And it was a very, never forget it, that particular morning.
And that was the last time you saw him for a little while then?
Yes. So that particular morning in the induction, everybody passed their physicals. There were 60 of us there, and at the end of the exams and paperwork and such, they called my name and said, "Wilson," they had an envelope, said, "Here is the airline tickets and bus tickets for all these guys. You're in charge of getting to the airport and getting to Fort Dix, New Jersey." And I'm looking around, I said, "Why did they pick me?" I was so naive. I thought we were going to get our uniforms that hour, that morning, right there in Syracuse. And I took my first airplane ride at 19 years old to Fort Dix, and we landed at, I believe, Newark Airport. And it was the blind leading the blind to try to find the bus to Fort Dix. And we finally did, and ended up going to Fort Dix. And I have quite a story about the first few hours of pulling into Fort Dix, if you would like to hear.
Sure, absolutely. We want lots of detail.
Okay, so we pull up with the bus, and they bring us into an administration building, and by this time we were all already making friends and joking amongst ourselves, like, okay, we're all in this together. And we brought into an administrative building, and in a little while a large black man in a heavily starched fatigue uniform with lots of stripes, obviously a sergeant, and he ended up basically being a first sergeant, comes in and he said, "Okay guys, fall in." So we, joking amongst ourselves, falling in and trying to look in a straight line and such. And within a few seconds, he started screaming, said, "You guys look like the worst excuse for men I've ever seen in my life. And starting right now and for the next 2 years, every second of your life belongs to the Army. And most of you are going to Vietnam, and some of you are going to die." And he is still screaming. And one guy didn't look serious enough, and he got in his face and for 5 minutes screamed at this guy that he better start getting serious. And we own you for the next 2 years. I wouldn't have blamed the guy if he peed his pants. And so they continued to scream at us, and we were marched for our buzz haircuts. And as we were walking outside in Fort Dix, Jeeps were zipping by us like they're running late to an appointment and such, and there were some platoons marching in different directions. So it was a beehive activity. And we're all thinking, okay, within a couple of days, we're going to be right in with these guys marching and such. And so that was the first couple of hours. So we were marched to a barracks, told get up in the morning for chow if you want it, but 7 a.m. you're going to go to all-day testing. And after all-day testing, you'll meet with someone, and that'll be that. So the next day we go to all-day testing, and I get sat down in a cubicle with one guy who was a low-ranking soldier. Said, okay, you did very well on your test. Would you consider going to Officers Candidate School? And I said, well, if I go to Officers Candidate School, how long will I be in the Army? He said, well, at least 4 years. And I said, no, I'll stay with the draft. And he said, well, you did well in the test. You can do anything you want to do. What would you like to do? And I said, I want to be in a fighting unit. I said, I want to be in a fighting unit. He goes, okay, infantry. And I said, you know what? My father was in the artillery during World War II. Put me in the artillery. He goes, done. Next. And that was that. So the following morning, we got called to a parade field. There's about 1,000 of us there, and the guy's on a megaphone up on top of the tower, and he reads off 50 names, and I'm one of them. He said, you guys stand to the side. And he said, all the rest of you are staying here at Fort Dix for basic training. You 50 guys are going to Fort Riley, Kansas to become part of the new 9th Infantry Division, which is being reformed to go to Vietnam in December. And the next thing I knew, I was on a plane to Kansas City, and then a 2-hour bus ride to Fort Riley, Kansas. And we get to Fort Riley, Kansas, and there's old barracks from World War II that were pretty much left to rot since World War II. They had no hot water in the barracks. So it's now May 21st or 2nd, whatever it is. And so that's our first day at Fort Riley. The following morning, at 6:30, whatever, another black gentleman, soldier, comes marching in our barracks and yells to fall in. And he's a small in statured gentleman with a really starched uniform, very strack. And he said, okay, you boys, or men, you men are part of the 84th Artillery, your Bravo Battery, and you're going to be part of the Bravo Battery with 6 artillery pieces. That's going to be part of the 1st to 84th Artillery with Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. And we're all going to Vietnam in December. All the sergeants here just came from Germany. And I can tell you, they're not happy training you draftees. And he's like, I got one other thing to tell you. Men's, I hates dirt. I hates it, and I will not tolerate a dirty barracks. I vividly remember that. And from that point forward, we had no TV, no movies, no phone calls. We were like in a prison for 8 weeks of basic training, from the getting up at 5 a.m. and being in bed at 8 p.m. Just like being in prison. Total, they were afraid of guys going AWOL and such, and they just kept us in tight wraps.
Give us a description of a typical day, in the life of a basic training recruit.
Okay, so they wake us up at 5 o'clock, and you go to the mess if you wanted it, mess was a treat, because they knew since we were going into combat, we should learn how to eat meals fast. So we'd go into the mess hall, and there was all these cooks, and there was a guy that met you right at the door, and he would start yelling at you, because it was just constant yelling at us like we were in prison, like we were prisoners. He said, okay, you got 5 minutes to eat your meal and get out. And so we'd be running and get our food, and we'd sit at the table, and he'd come up to the table, "Get out! Eat your meal, get out! Swallow it and get out!" And we had 5 minutes to eat our meal. So that was always a treat for the 3 meals a day that had happened for 8 weeks of basic training. And right up to 8 weeks.
How was the food? Was it?
Oh, the food is awful. If we want to talk about food, I don't know how the Army made potatoes taste like cardboard. And every day in Vietnam it was even worse. But they thought that a good vegetable for the soldiers to eat was lima beans. I would not eat the lima beans, and that was our vegetable. And I lost, in Vietnam, I lost 15 pounds because there's nothing to eat. It's not like you go to PX and bulk up on junk food and such, whatever they serve you. And once in a while we'd get ham that tasted like bologna. And they had bread, and eggs were eggs. But once we get to Vietnam, a whole different story about the food. But the food was awful. And then you had to pull duty, and kitchen police, like KP, was the absolute worst thing that I ever experienced in the Army. Get you up at 3 a.m., report to the mess hall, and these cooks, all them sergeants, they wanted to make your life miserable before, but if you're on KP, they made it triple miserable. Peeling potatoes and mopping floors and grease pits and washing the trays of 150 guys in my unit.
Did they rotate that, or was it a form of punishment depending on the situation?
It could be punishment, but you had rotated. They would rotate you had guard duty and you had KP. It's called duty. And you probably once a week you got KP, once a week you got guard duty, and they would rotate it for 8 weeks. So if it comes up to 8 weeks of KP, unless you screwed up during something during training, so if you're on KP tomorrow, that would be the punishment. Mm-hmm. But I remember that the biggest punishment was when the sergeants would scream in our face, is if you don't do this, I'm going to Article 15 your ass.
Which was?
Article 15 is a way of the military punishing you formally. And depending on what the fine was or what they found you for, you could actually go to prison. And if you get to prison, sent for 10 days in prison or 4 months, whatever, that was considered bad time. And remember, they had us for 2 years. Mm-hmm. So that's 765 days or something in 740 days. So you just added another, whatever the prison time was bad time. You had to add it to your service. And believe me, the threat of 1 more day in the service was enough for the scare tactic. Anything you want, Sarge. I'll do it. I mean, don't worry about it. I won't give you any grief.
I assume the Article 15 didn't have the normal jurisprudence that a citizen would have.
No jurisprudence. Yeah. Article 15, if you don't do that, I'm going to Article 15 your ass. They would constantly say that.
Do you remember the names of any of the drill instructors, any of them that really stand out that had some rather colorful language or way of doing things?
Well, Bunch was the little guy. It was really a nice guy.
His name was Bunch?
Bunch, B-U-N-C-H-E. And a slight frame, but you could tell they call strack in the Army when they got their stuff together. The fatigues are perfect. The boots are shined right and the hat's just right. And the way he marched and such. So I actually liked him. He was a solid guy. The rest were kind of jerks, the way they treated us. But I remember their names.
And did a lot of those guys have combat time, or were they always drill instructors? Did you have a feel for that?
So we're artillery, so you don't get the CIBs. Like if they were infantry in like Korea and stuff, they would have got the CIB badges. So I never saw a sergeant with a CIB. Mm-hmm. So if they were in combat, you don't get anything for artillery.
And the CIB stands for?
Combat Infantry badge. Mm-hmm. So you basically got to be in the infantry to get those things. But I didn't know if any of these guys had been in combat. I didn't think so. I know they were kind of old and pudgy. And in my opinion, they were past their prime, and they were pissed that at this stage in their life, with a few years left before they retire, first of all, going to war in Vietnam, and number 2, being put up with a unit that's basically over 70% of us are draftees, and then another 10-15% were the cadre, which are all the sergeants, and then the officers. So we're all draftees.
And they knew you were all draftees. Tell us, was there a differential in the way they would treat a draftee versus someone that enlisted?
Yes. So when you get in the Army, I suspect the other services as well, but the Army, you're given a serial number, and the first two characters of the serial number are the alphabet. And RA is for regular Army, and US is for draftee. So just about every day you would be asked your general orders. That was part of the training and such. What are your general orders? What's your serial number? What's your rifle serial number? Blah, blah, blah. And I'd say, okay, US 51572136, which was my... So as soon as they heard US, I said, oh, you're a US. And they would disrespect you. And that would be for my whole tour of service in the Army. When you gave your serial number, oh, you're... Because so the other guys, a few of them, not many, had... signed up, regular Army. And they were the first ones to get rank, and they were treated well over here, and then they would treat you better. But us draftees were in it together, and we were tight, and we stuck together.
And that was all basic training still, or was any specialized training? Or were you...
Oh, yes, this is just basic training.
Okay.
So basic training, my MLS at that point in Bravo Battery was going to be a cannoneer, and I looked forward to being on the guns and actually going in combat to Vietnam. I was ready to serve my country. I consider myself a patriot, and I said, if I'm going to war, I want to be in the action, and I want to fight for my country. I was very proud to wear the uniform of our country, especially in battle. And I lost my train of thought there. What were we talking about?
So we're talking about, it was basic training.
Oh, basic training.
Not specialized yet.
So they send you home for 2 weeks leave. I come back from 2 weeks leave. I report to the main office, orderly office, and they say, "Oh, Wilson, you've been transferred to headquarters battery. You're going to Fort Dix for Campbell school because you scored the highest on the thing. And we need somebody with brains to be able to do crypto and radio." I said, "No, I want to be in the guns." "Forget it, you're gone." So I just got back from flying from Syracuse to Fort Riley, Kansas, in the middle of Kansas. Within an hour, I'm told you're getting on a train to go from Fort Riley to Fort Dix, New Jersey, on a train to go to 4 weeks of commo school.
So to put it in perspective, Syracuse is probably about, what, 275 miles front to Fort Dix.
So at first I
sent you back to Kansas first.
Saying, oh, yeah, and then I'm saying, okay, I'm going to Fort Dix. That don't mean I can go see my girlfriend in Fort Dix. And so in a way, I said, okay. And we were, when we got to Fort Dix, we had our patches on our left shoulder, 9th Infantry Division. All the other guys in commo school weren't assigned to a unit yet, so they had no patches. And we were given our own little barracks, and there was 30 of us. And we were treated like kings because they knew we were going in combat. So it was that was fun. In commo school, learning how to climb poles and do radios, repairs, and do radio and Morse code and laying telephone wire, which was we did most every day, and so that was combo school. When I came back, so combo school was 4 weeks, and another week of leave, whatever. Came back, and it was called, I think, Advanced Infantry Training or such, where everybody gets back, the whole units get back together. They had all gone to different schools. Like some of my other people in my platoon had gone to artillery school, some went to ammo school, some went to survey school, mess, medics, all went to different schools, and they all came back together and say, okay, now we're a unit, now we're going to go in the field and play war and get ready to go to Vietnam. So that was early November. And then we started basically playing war out in the fields of Kansas with artillery. I'll never forget the first day we go into the field, and I pull up in our commo truck, and my artillery guys, all my guys from my platoon that I'm no longer with now, they're on the cannons. So our whole battalion, there's 6 guns per battery, which are 3 times 6. That's 18 of artillery units on wheels, and one battery of 8-inch guns that are look like tanks, and they're all in a field pointing in one direction. And I get out of the Campbell truck and we go over. I see my buddies and we're all slapping each other on the back and saying hello. I haven't seen the guys. And all of a sudden I hear a radio say, "Okay, fire mission, fire mission." And all the guys run to the cannons. And you could hear numbers being over the radio and stuff. And the guys are adjusting their cannons. And they're all pointing in the same direction. And one of the guns close to me fires. I'll never forget the rest of my life how loud that noise of that gun was. And it lifted me off the ground. It seemed like a foot, but it was probably only an inch with that noise. And my head was just with the noise. These are 155 howitzers now. And I'm looking at the guys on the gun in terror. I said, "You got it." They go, and the next thing I know, over the radio it says, "Okay, battalion mass, 6 rounds." Battalion mass, 6 rounds means at every gun. So now we got 18 plus 4 is 20, 22 guns. Fire 6 rounds as fast as you can. So all the artillery pieces are firing 6 rounds as fast as they could. And so that's my indoctrination into artillery.
Did you have any hearing protection?
They gave us little tiny earplugs. It was a joke because they did not work. And I don't know how the guys around the gun, and we'll talk about it in Vietnam, so how they can hear to this day. For the
Describe a little bit about that gun, the range and the size of the
155 round. It's a big round that weighs about 60 pounds. 60 pounds. And it goes into the breech, which is I wasn't on the guns now, so I'm just what I see and stuff. So they put the round in, and then there's bags of gunpowder. They're about this big, 1 to 7 bags, depending on how far you want that round to go. And they can go up to 9 miles. 155 towed.
And when you say towed, that's because they were wheeled vehicles that were towed behind a truck.
Yeah, and they're on big wheels. Mm-hmm. And then the 8-inch guns had the round was like 100 pounds, and they had a machine that would lift that round up and into the breech.
So was the round itself explosive, so that when it impacted, it exploded?
Yeah, they'd have to screw a fuse on it, and so the fuse would detonate it.
Yeah. Have you ever been in the presence within eyesight of the round actually striking the ground and exploding?
Only in the training, because we had big open fields that you could see the round landing out there and stuff. But in Vietnam, with the jungle so high, we couldn't see where our rounds were landing. We could hear them. We hear them. We knew they were hitting, but I couldn't see where they. I saw the after effects when we'd see the empty craters and such, but not the...
When it exploded on the ground, what was the radius that it was, what was the effective radius, the kill zone, if you will?
Well, the 8-inch guns, they used to call in the 8-inch guns to make a clearing for the infantry sometimes if they were going to set up a night ambush or such. So that would be a pretty good size crater, 100 yards per...
100 yards. And would it knock the trees?
100 feet.
100 feet.
Yeah.
Would it knock down the trees and really clear the land, or what was the nature of the aftermath if it was, say, it hitting in the middle of the jungle?
Yeah, it would definitely... it wouldn't take them out by the roots, but it would take
Bend them over. Yeah.
Take them off at the... You could sell it around and landed there.
Okay.
And a 155 wasn't as potent, but I mean, you wouldn't want to be on the other end of a 155 round.
Okay. And how was the accuracy on those?
Excellent. I'm not a cannoneer and stuff, so I wasn't involved in all that stuff. But I would be in the fire base, or if we're in the field in a remote fire base with the guns right next to me and they're firing. And they would make their adjustments. I mean, you hear over the radio, down 50, over 50, down 50, left 30, something. They'd make the adjustments. They'd fire another round.
They're talking about feet, or what are they, degrees, or what were they?
Degrees and the clicks and the little things to aim the gun. And so you got a forward observer that was telling you that left 50, down 30, whatever, and they would make the adjustments. And once they got aimed in, which they were firing white phosphorus rounds, they called them Willie Peters, and that would be a marking round. And the forward observer, the infantry where we're at, or the Piper Cub that was up there, would direct the fire. And once they got the coordinates, they honed in on that baby. They would just let them have it with as many rounds as they wanted. But most of the time, they were in support of infantry that was out there in search and destroy, that had found something they wanted blown up, or they were going into an area and they wanted to blow it up first before they went in. So it was supportive infantry.
All right. So, and again, you're now in crypto is your assignment? Or you?
So we're still back in the States, right? We're still talking about it? So, so I'm in radio and telephone, they call it. So, and I hadn't been in crypto yet. I didn't get into crypto till we got over in Nam. So I'm just a normal, they call them wireman, radio and telephone. Yeah, we need a radio over here, we need a telephone wire over here. Hook up that guy that's over in that bunker with a telephone or a radio, and that's what we did.
What was the nature of the radios? Were they size-wise, weight-wise back then? You know, we didn't have the integrated circuits we do today, but...
Well, the size of a backpack.
What'd they weigh?
40, not even, for about 40 pounds.
Yeah, a lot different.
And then when I got to Nam, I had a Jeep, and I had scrambler radios, which everything that went over the radios was in code. And you had to have a scrambler radio on the other end to be able to understand what was saying. And a Jeep with 2 scrambler radios, because I was the communication guy, was a very coveted thing, and I'll talk about that when we get into that.
All right. So let's continue with your training. Where did they have you go next?
So we're in Kansas. We're in the middle of Kansas. And by the way, I just happened to notice that one night that I'm on guard duty, just picture yourself in the middle of an open field in Kansas that we're playing war, so we're circled up the wagons, if you will, and the guys are out on the perimeter digging the foxhole, and you're in that foxhole for the night on guard duty. And I'm just sitting there at, it was November 18th, I think, 1966. And I'm in the bunker, or in this foxhole that I had dug, and there's rabbits running around me and stuff. And I look up into the sky this beautiful night, and I see a shooting star. And then I saw another one, and another one. Within a half an hour, thousands of shooting stars. And I happened to be fortunate to be at, they call it the Leonid meteor shower, that every 18 years or something it comes. And the best place to watch it that particular year was like in the middle of the Midwest, where I was in Kansas. So it looked like the end of the world. I mean, thousands of meteors coming down. And I didn't know what to do. Should I go wake up the whole base? Because they're all sleeping. Should I wake them up? And because I was the only guy out on the perimeter on guard duty. And it kept going for 2 hours. Wow. I finally went down and I started waking the guys up. And I said, you got to see this. And so I was like privileged to see that in person.
Every 18 years.
I think it's 18, maybe it's 10 years or 20. Yeah. It's certainly, there's a cycle that it comes back. It's Leonid or something like that.
Interesting.
If you look it up, Google it, November 18th, 1966 meteor shower in Kansas, it comes right up. There's paragraphs about it.
Interesting.
So then we played war until like 10th of December, something like that. Say, okay, you got 2 weeks leave before we go to Nam. we're going to go by train. When you get back, we're going to go by train. We're going to load up all the artillery pieces, all you guys, and the whole 84th Artillery. In fact, the whole brigade. There was 4,000 of us in this brigade. And so I go home. I had send-off parties and such. And send-off party, I went to my friend's house, and we proceeded to get drunk, and they put my head between, they pulled out a dining room table and put me in the dining room table and closed the thing on my head, and were pouring shots down my throat. And one of the guys that was there ended up being killed in Nam after I got back. But anyway, so I left, said my goodbyes. I got back to Fort Riley. We loaded on a train, and it was 3 days of going to Oakland, California. So we went through what a gorgeous train ride it was, and I had my own Pullman car. Everybody had their own Pullman. So to be able to go across transcontinental to Oakland, California, I vividly remember going through the Sierra Madres and then getting to waking up, looking out my Pullman car. We just crossed into California, and the grasses were like a chartreuse, bright green chartreuse. And here we are. It was past Christmas, so it was like December 30th or something like that. So back in Syracuse, of course, it's snowing, and to see that bright grass, I had never been to California, and I'd never placed any place west of Kansas. I'd been no place out of New York State until I joined the Army. So it was quite a thing to see that. So then we loaded on a ship. It was an old freighter, a merchant marine ship that they converted into a troop ship called the Geiger. And the bunks were 18 inches apart. There's 4,000 of us jammed on this ship. And we're in Oakland, and we sat around for a day or two, and they wanted to get out of there because we're very vulnerable just sitting there in a ship for all kinds of reasons. And so we're leaving in the morning, and we're going under the Golden Gate Bridge. It was a beautiful, cold, but beautiful sunny morning. And we're all out on deck looking at the Alcatraz and the Golden Gate Bridge. And I'm thinking to myself, well, this is going to be a great cruise. In fact, we're going to be in the South Pacific here pretty soon. It's going to be warm and stuff like that. And I had been fishing on Oneida Lake my whole younger life. And I thought I knew rough seas fishing. And within 6 hours, we were in 10-foot waves, making this huge ship go up 10 feet and then down 10 feet. And long story short, I think all 4,000 of us were puking our guts out for days, that the floors were slippery with puke on them because we couldn't make it to the toilets, and there were gang toilets, and there'd be 3 heads in every toilet. And everybody was seasick, and they had trash cans at the end of the bunks for people to puke in the trash cans. And we'd try to go to the mess hall in the morning to eat, and then we'd puke on our plates, and it was awful. And it was 21 days of going to Nam, and I think I was seasick 11 of the 21 days.
That's pretty bad. And I would think having a high bunk would be better than a low bunk.
And I know I wasn't the low bunk, but I don't think I was the highest either, but whatever.
So where did you land? You went right to Vietnam from
Yeah, so they stopped in, I think, Guam to refuel. And I remember the ship had always a chatter on it. All the 4,000 of us, you could hear everybody talking all the time, right until just everybody went to bed. So even at nighttime. And it got to where it was nice weather. We're in the South Pacific, and there'd be whales and flying fish and such. And they said, well, this is great. And so one night, right at dusk, we all of a sudden, there's quiet in the ship, and all we could hear was the purring engine of the ship. And so some of us that were down below came up on deck, and there was a lot of guys on deck, and you'd look to the western sky and you'd see silhouettes of these mountains. And someone said, men, that's Vietnam. So that was our first sighting of Vietnam, was just at dusk. We were probably in the middle of the Vietnam, where the mountains were. seeing those silhouettes, and it was dark. You couldn't see one light on the shoreline. And within the next morning, we were anchored off of Vung Tau, which was like, kind of like a resort area for the Vietnamese, I think. But there's a big beach there. And there was other ship that was like a sister ship that had followed us with other soldiers from the 9th Division on it. And so this was like February 1st, something like that, of 1967. 21-day journey. And next thing you know, they say, okay, full battle gear, load up, we're disembarking. So next thing they put a net over the side of the boat and ship, and the LCDs come up, hundreds of them, just like a D-Day. So we go down the nets with full battle gear, with grenades and ammo, flak vest and helmets and such, and we come down the ropes and get in these LCDs and go towards the beach. And so we didn't know what to expect. We land on the beach, and they drop the front of the LCD. We get up on the sand on the beach, and there's 300 dump trucks. And all of a sudden, the band starts playing. It's a 9th Infantry Division band on the beach playing an Army fight song. And so I thought, wow, this is a weird type of deal. And then we loaded up in these, they call them deuce-and-a-half, they're like dump trucks, and took off, we thought, to the Mekong Delta. Ends up going northeast of Saigon about 40 miles to a new fire base they were building. And that's where we went that particular day. If you ever see the movie Good Morning Vietnam with Robin Williams, there's a scene in there where he's driving through Saigon, and he comes across some of these trucks with guys of the 1st Infantry Division that had just landed. And Robin Williams starts questioning them, interviewing them for about 5 to 10 minutes. And he's asking them, where are you from, what are you doing? But Robin Williams and whoever wrote the script and such knew that the point was that they knew that these guys were going into combat, and some of them are going to die. And they're all youngsters. I mean, basically, we were kids. We were 19-year-old kids, although I just turned 20 while I was in training. They're all 20-year-olds, most of us, all draftees. We're going to go into combat, and that's the feeling. And Robin, in that particular movie, the director nailed it, of Robin Williams. The feeling he knew of these guys were going to go into combat, and some were going to die. So I don't know.
How did you feel at that time? Were you excited, afraid? What was
we weren't totally scared, but we were apprehensive, and we couldn't wait to get where we were supposed to go, because we felt very vulnerable in the back of these trucks going through hamlets. Mm-hmm. One hamlet, we must have been on the road for 2 hours, and there's dirt and stuff. We're getting filthy with all the dust. And next thing we know, we pull into this big clearing, and there were some tents already set up and such. And they said, "You're going over to that northeast corner." We go over there, and I have pictures of it where it's just the jungle had just been bulldozed. It's just dirt with little sticks and stuff like you might see a cleared site nowadays. Say, boys, this is going to be our home for the next few months. And so we dug our foxholes, put big tents up next to the foxholes, and proceeded to build that fire base up. And the first night was quite an adventure. And our artillery pieces are being towed in with these deuce-and-a-half trucks, the dump trucks. And again, we've got 18 on wheels and 4 that are driving in that are look like tanks. And they get spread out, and they start circling the howitzers, the cannons, with sandbags about 4 feet high, 3 feet high, all around every artillery piece. That's the first things they do. And we're all helping to do these sandbags and stuff to protect protect the cannons. That's the number one priority when you're artillery, is you protect those cannons. They are the jewels of the fire base, and they got to be protected because they're going to save your life. So that's what we did. And as I'm filling sandbags, a guy comes running up to me and say, "Hey, Wilson, there's a guy looking for a Wilson of the 84th Artillery over here." So I went over there to this Jeep that had pulled up, and it's one of my buddies from Syracuse, is the driver of the commanding officer of the 39th Infantry, part of the 84th, or part of the 9th Infantry Division. And he said, "I come over to welcome you. Welcome here. We got here a couple of days ago." I said, "Okay, great." He says, "We're going on operation tomorrow to the Iron Triangle, which is about 40 miles northwest of us here. And we understand it's loaded with Viet Cong and stuff." And I said, "Oh, God, man, okay." His name's Bob. I said, "Okay, Bob, keep your head down. Good luck, buddy." And he pulls off. And the sergeant looks at me, because I'm still a PFC. And he said, "Okay, Wilson, you're still dog shit. Go back to work." And so nighttime comes, and I happen to be we're all on guard duty. So we're in our foxholes. And this is the first night in Vietnam now. I haven't even been in Vietnam 24 hours yet. And around 3 o'clock in the morning, all hell breaks loose out in the jungle. We could see off in the distance explosions going off, one after the other. Looks like 4th of July celebration going on. And I said, "Oh, shit." And that's my buddy in combat. And it went on for 2 hours, and then the sun came up, and all of a sudden it died out, and we thought we were under attack. And what had happened is they blew up an ammo dump over there. But we were told to go to mess hall, mess tent. There's no mess hall. The tent they set up for mess. And we go to mess, we got coffee, and we got eggs and bacon and toast. And that was my first day in Vietnam. Because I thought we were under attack, and it's basically the Viet Cong had blown up an ammo dump right near us.
Did that location have a name, or did it acquire?
That was called Firebase Bearcat.
Bearcat. Okay.
And that was the first home in the 9th Infantry Division, was Bearcat.
And where was it? Was there also
northeast
a village?
of Saigon, about 40 miles. There's a village maybe 5 miles away called Long Than. Mm-hmm. And so it's right off a certain highway. I forgot what route it was, but the main thrust was that if the enemy tried to take Saigon from that particular direction, that we were the unit that, with our artillery, be able to stop them from coming down that road to try to take over Saigon. And the 1st Division was west of us. 1st Infantry Division was west of us about 30, 40 miles with their fire base. And they were to protect Saigon from that side of the infantry coming in, or the enemy. And so we proceeded to build that fire base, just day in, day out, building that fire base up from just dirt.
Were there eventually buildings, or was it all tent-based?
They built buildings just as we were leaving it, because that was February, and in early November, we moved down to the Mekong Delta. We left that fire base, and the Australians and the Thailand, or the Koreans and the Australians took over that fire base when we left it. Fire base Bearcat. And we went down to Dong Tam, which I was the one brigade. There's 2 other brigades in the 9th Division that had already been down in the Mekong Delta, in a fire base called Dong Tam that we moved to. Was
Bearcat ever attacked while you were there, or was it?
They never gave ground attacks, but we used to get mortar attacks all the time. Mm-hmm. And they never hit us. They were going after the helicopter, with a big helicopter base, which every day would see 50 to 100 helicopters going over our head on missions, back and forth, back and forth. And all types of helicopters, Chinooks, Hueys, Cobras. And so we would occasionally get mortar attacks. Once in a while, one would come into our little area of where my tent was. But most of them were after the helicopter pad, which was about a mile away.
Now, were you constantly at Bearcat, or did you ever have any time where they said, all right, you can take 2 days and go to Saigon, or was it always online?
Never going to Saigon and such. Maybe one day. But it had to be a different reason that they had to go there. I remember one of my buddies got wounded. I went to visit him in the hospital in Tanzania. But the main thing was that the combat was at night. Nothing happened during the day. You could have been back in the States. That's how quiet it was during the day. Other than our guns are firing. Our guns are firing all day long and night.
And they're firing in specific response to requests from the guys that are
fire missions requests, because you'd hear we'd be, no matter where you were, you'd hear the radios going. It's a fire mission, gun 12 over here, an Alpha battery be firing some, and Delta battery, which was the 8-inch, be on a different fire mission. And they were just constantly, so all different guns are doing on their own little fire missions.
You said they could fire up to
9 miles.
Yeah.
And so night is when it was scary, because the bulldozers had made we called it a berm, was basically a dirt wall around us, and that was our wall. And every 100 yards, they dug a slot to build a bunker in. And in that bunker was an M60 machine gun. And there'd be 3 guys to that bunker. So an hour before dusk, whoever was on guard, and you had quite a few people on guard almost every night. So 3 would go to that bunker, another 3 with ammo. We each had 200 rounds of ammo and an M60 machine gun. And night, as soon as it got dark, is when it got scared, because right in front of us, 100 yards, was the strip that they had cleared, was a jungle, and 150 miles of jungle. The enemy could move a whole division through that jungle. We wouldn't know it till they were about to attack us. And so it was scary. I know that on the way over to Vietnam, they showed us movies in the ship. And there's a Daughters of the Revolution or something, where the ones that would preview the movies to say, don't show them that movie, it's got too much sex in it. It would bother them. And so they show us a movie, 55 Days from Peking, which is about the British getting overrun by the Chinese. I swear to God that happened. Can you imagine them showing us that movie? I mean, to this day, I have nightmares about being overrun. And so that was as soon as it got dark, Charlie, they call it Charlie, the Viet Cong, owned the night. We owned the day, but they owned the night. Because they're vulnerable. The jungle's right there. There's 3 guys on one of them. That's it.
So other than the M60, what were your personal firearms that you were assigned?
I just M16. That's it.
So you had an
I
M16
M16 and never left your side with 200 rounds of ammo. And we had grenades, but they're always in a box, and you could get them if you needed them. But we'd man, it'd be 2 hours, 2 hours of sleep and 4 hours awake. That's how they, and you rotate all night long in the bunker.
So you're on guard duty, and in addition, your other tasks?
So they'd guard duty at night, and you'd try to get some sleep, even though there were rats running through the freaking bunker all the time. You'd be laying down there, and the rats would come right across your chest. And as soon as it was morning, okay, you got 100 sandbags. Each guy had to fill 100 sandbags a day. So you'd get a partner, and so that's 200 between the 2 of you. And filled, I don't know if you ever fill the sandbag, but it is a pain in the ass. And they would come and dump sand, and all our guys would be there filling their 100 sandbags a day, because everything had to be sandbagged for protection. Almost head high all around the tents and bunkers we were building for if we got attacked, we'd have bunkers inside the perimeter.
Tell us about the weather while you were at Bearcat. What was the time of year and the weather like?
So when we first landed, it was the dry season, and there was dust all over the place all the time. And the first day we landed, it was like, I hadn't been to Florida, but since I had been to Florida, it was like the hottest day you would ever experience in Florida. It was like that every day. And it was blue sky every day during the dry season. So not until about May is when the monsoon season started. And that I can talk about when we get into May if you'd like, but
just
yeah. So it got to once that it became monsoon season, it was being wet and wetter because we had no buildings to get into, so we're still in tents. And picture the most rain you've ever seen in your life and the hardest rainstorm. That would happen 2 to 3 times a day. And it was like every day you could set your watch by it. At 20 minutes after 3, you'd see on the top of the jungle, it looked like a black cloud coming. And it kept getting closer and closer and closer. And that was a monsoon coming in. And it would be a deluge for an hour. And it would happen again maybe 6 hours later in the middle of the night. And it was tough to stay dry. And so and it would actually be cold at night when once the monsoons came. And then you had the bugs. So when we got there, if you were outside at night, you were going to get eaten alive. And malaria is the biggest deal. And so you had to take malaria pills, supposedly take them. And first of all, they were the size of an Oreo cookie. And within an hour after taking the malaria pill, which was quinine, and you would get the worst cramps you've ever had in your life and the worst diarrhea. And this was once a month. You're supposed to take this pill. So after 3 months of the pain, I said, I'm getting malaria. I'm not going through this pain. I don't care if I get malaria. That's how bad the pills were. I stopped taking them. And I know one of my buddies has got malaria. But it still recurs at this day. He's still alive.
And you never got it?
I never got it.
And the mosquitoes?
But we had we had cots and with sticks sticking up with a net over it, so you'd lift the net to get in your cot all night long. And then once it got daylight, the bugs go away. It was just at night.
Yeah. And that's during the monsoon only?
No, that was year-round. But
year-round.
Especially during the monsoon.
Any other animals that would regularly frequent the neighborhood?
So I mean, that's one of the humorous, there's a couple of humorous stories about when I'm on guard duty with the animals. So there's one particular bunker that at the corner of the fire base that became like the one I always seemed to be assigned to. And there was one big tree right at the corner of the jungle line that I used to fixate on. And sometimes we get there early before dark and kind of just relaxing, reading our letters and just looking out at the jungle line. And I remember I see something moving out there at the jungle line. And we had binoculars, and I'm looking at it, and it's a little tiny deer. And he's just feeding out there. I say, oh, look at that little tiny, isn't that cute and stuff. Then I see movement behind it. And it's a freaking tiger. And it's crawling, stalking this little deer. And I get on the radio to the officer, the guard type stuff. I said, sir, this is Wilson Bunker. I said, I got a tiger outside my tent. He goes, Wilson, is this you? If you're busting my chops, I'm going to have your ass. So he comes down there, and says, oh my God, it is a bunker, or it is a tiger. And we got an infantry unit out there in ambush too. And I'm saying to myself, great, another way to die over here. There's freaking tigers right there, wild tigers, 150 yards from my bunker, type stuff. So that's one incident where animals. And another incident that we finally get the night scopes where you can see through at nighttime. And we're in the bunkers, and it's real quiet. And I tell you, we're scared at night because you can hear a pin drop. And our howitzers are firing about every 10 minutes. And they're firing their harassment rounds, they call them, to harass the enemy and illuminate out in the jungle and such. So they're firing. You get used to it and you sleep right through it. But I'm watching I'm on guard, and I'm watching through the night scope trying to use it and stuff, and I'm looking at jungle line, and I see movement, and it looks like people. I said, holy shit. And I said, I'm watching it, there's 2 or 3 of them. And so I wake up my bunker mates, and I said, and they're looking and said, yeah. So we call for a flare to be sent up out there. So the flare goes up, and the flare, they got little parachutes on them. They shoot up, and they come down. It takes about 10 minutes for them to come, maybe 15 by the time they peter out. But they lighted up the area pretty good. So by now, my part of the fire base is kind of alert that something's going on, or the flare's going up and such. So we keep looking and looking, and I can't see people anymore. Then all of a sudden I see them again. That it looks like guys. And so then I don't see them. So about an hour goes by. Not a peep or nothing. I don't see them. And I'm sitting in the corner of my bunker, and all of a sudden a monkey jumps up in front of me, holding an empty box of crackers. And what it was a group of monkeys coming towards our bunkers to steal the care packages that guys would get from home with their crackers and popcorn and stuff. We'd take them to the bunkers. That's what we had, rats too. And scared the hell out of us. It was freaking just ready to shoot, and it's freaking monkeys. They're headed, and he's just standing up there with the cracker, just looking at us. Say, "You got a problem?" And so that was a funny deal with the animals. That's the only other animal issues that I remember.
All right. So, anything else at Bearcat? Or are we going to move on to the next camp? Or?
Let's see, Bearcat. Well, I mean, we would be under attack. So here's an incident for me. So now I'm in November 2nd is my birthday. And so we'd been there since February building this fire base up. So by the end of September, we had the base pretty well built. And all we had to do was play war every day and not have to fill sandbags and stuff. And then it became kind of boring because there's nothing to do. But so once in a while, because I had my Scrambler Jeep, they would say, Wilson, they need I got to talk about my crypto. So in late July, they come to me and say, Wilson, we need a guy to handle crypto for the battalion, for the whole battalion. And it's you had a good score and stuff. We don't trust anybody else to be able to handle the complexity of this stuff, and because you got to have a safe with connects and such with your Jeep with the Scrambler radios that have their secret code cards that go in the radios. They slide in, and things called SOIs, which look like a little pack of cigarettes, but they have all the codes in it that are pertinent for that day. And messages sent over the radios that don't have Scrambler radios, they have to be in code. So there's 3 characters, alpha characters, representing one letter. So if you were to spell out a message in code, you would do what code, you'd say Charlie Delta Lima, and that might mean A. That someone would write down.
And that changed from time to time?
Their code book. So that code book would be in existence until it was called compromised. When a pilot got shot down, or the infantry got overrun, or someone lost the code book. So when the code book gets compromised, you had to go refill the code books. So I would have to get on helicopters or river boats and have all these new code books to go to my artillery pieces, which had been taken out of Bearcat and spread out to different areas in Vietnam, supporting different infantry units. And I would have to hunt them down and give them the code book and get on a helicopter and go to the next one until I got them all done. And sometimes I would just get back to the firebase, to my tent, and they said, compromised again. You got to go. I'd have to redo the whole thing again. And that's
where they set up as kits, or it's like, okay.
No, they're in a big, like a newspaper, size of a newspaper thing, and you'd have to cut them with scissors that would fit into these packets that look like cigarettes packs. And there'd be a code on the top saying whatever date number they were. And so when the guy on the radio says, we're going to code book number blah, 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 he'd know to go which code book we're talking about, so you to be able to decipher this message we're sending you. And so I did that for the rest of my career in Vietnam, was constantly going out of the fire base, doing they call them SOIs. Now, occasionally, I would get requests that I would go with my Jeep, because my Jeep was a coveted piece of equipment with the scrambler radios, two of them, that I would support in infantry. So the closest I came to death one time was when I got assigned to guys in infantry, 47th Infantry, going on a little 3-day operation, Florida operation, out in the bush, and I went with them. We drove for about an hour and a half till we get to this area, and they pull in this field, and immediately out of vehicles, stuck in the mud right up to the rocker panels, including my Jeep. So they finally had to drag us out of the mud, and we set up tents. And we couldn't dig our foxholes because it was so wet that you dig down a foot and the water would just come right up there. So we had to build it up. So we had sandbags up. So myself and another bunker mate built this so fast as we could, a little tent bunker. And so as soon as we get there starts we're getting a fire. We're here, small arms fire in the jungle just near us, right around this little perimeter we set up. And we see helicopters coming in, firing into the jungle. So we know we got action. And a jet comes flying in there, and we thought we were going to do napalm, but he didn't do napalm, he just did a bomb. And we said, okay. So they said, we got contact around here. So they had tanks and APC carriers and made a small perimeter, and our little foxholes are inside that. And it's monsoon, so it's raining, everything's wet. And it's quiet. And I go to sleep. Next thing you know, a guy's waking us up, myself and my new roommate, or tent mate, that I never didn't know. Because the officer had got my Jeep. When I pulled up, he says, "Wilson, I'll take care of this Jeep. You go to your tent for the next couple of days. I don't need you." I said, "Okay." So the guy wakes us up and said, "We got contact on the other side of the fire base here. We need you. Bring your rifle and all the ammo." I go there, and we're right next to a tank, and it's pretty quiet and stuff. And the guy said, "Okay, at 1:17 we're going to have a mad minute." A mad minute means that everybody fires their weapon for 1 minute into the jungle line, because they had heard or found contact. They knew there was enemy out there in the wood line. So we fire within seconds. We start getting a return fire. We can see the muzzle flashes in the jungle fire, and I can hear the bullets going by my head. And they're returning the fire to us because they see our muzzle flashes and such. And I can hear the bullets pounding off the ping off the tank behind me, right next to me, ping, 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 and such. And they're firing at us, and then we hear the thump, thump, thump. We know what that is. That's incoming mortars. But everybody knew what it was, and nobody yelled incoming because we all knew what it was. And the mortars are coming in, but they're landing behind us. But we're all out on the edge of the perimeter, so nobody's getting hurt because they're going off behind us. So this went on for a couple hours, and then it stopped. And they said ceasefire, everything stops. And I go back to my tent / little bunker we built, and there's a mortar round stuck in the mud. Fins are up, stuck in the mud right next to my foxhole, which wasn't a hole, but it built up and stuff. So I put barbed wire around it with some toilet paper hanging so people wouldn't step on the thing.
And it never detonated?
It never got, it stayed there. We pulled up and left.
The accuracy obviously was good, but luckily the mud, you think, saved you?
I don't know why it didn't explode, but I assume the mud was so soft that it didn't.
No impact, just kind of absorbed it?
Yeah. So that was one time.
At that point, is there such a thing as luck? I mean, how did you, the providence of God, what was it that you thought about when that happened?
And then, so I just, it's like, I used to constantly say, "Are you shitting me?" Like the day when I landed on the beaches and the band's playing. I say, "Are you shitting me?" And that scenario with the monkeys and with the tiger, I would say, "Are you shitting me? Are you shitting?" And here's another scenario. So I got another scenario back that was, you talk about something humorous. At Bearcat, filling sandbags, mind our own business. A Jeep pulls up, and we can see it's a captain, gets out, and he's talking to our sergeant. And we figure something's up. Usually when something like this happens, somebody's got killed in our unit, and or somebody's parent died or something, and they say, "Wilson, come here. They're after you." I say, "Oh, God." All I could think of was my father died. So I go running up to the captain and salute him. And he goes, "Are you the Wilson that played a lot of baseball?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Do you have a glove?" I just happened to have my glove. I took a glove with me all through the service. I said, "Yeah." He says, "Grab your glove, pack your clothes. For 3 days, you're coming with me." And I said, "What?" So here we are on the edge of the bush now and stuff. So we drive about half a mile, and that's where all the helicopters and such were. And they had made out a softball diamond. And there was about 15 other guys. They said, "Okay, General Westmoreland wants to have a softball tournament in Saigon, and we're going to represent the 9th Infantry Division, and we're forming a team right now. And we're going to practice today, and tomorrow we're getting on a deuce-and-a-half truck and going to Tansanut, and there's going to be a tournament." Okay, so we try out and such, and I was a good hitter too. So I used to play first base, but I was a pitching hardball. So it says, "So you're first base, Wilson." So I'm first baseman with no first baseman's glove, trying to catch a hard softball. But anyway, that's where we were. So we're a ragtag unit, and we practiced for like 3 hours, and we're ready to go into play. And we're going to go to Tansanut and play these guys that have been nothing but playing softball every day for like 9 months now, with diamonds, and they've got all the gloves and uniforms. So we get there, and Tansanut, I'd never been to Tansanut Air Base, which is a combination hospital air base in Saigon. We pull in, and it's like a big complex. And they closed the gates behind us, and we still went to where they put us in a tent. And they issued a 9th Infantry Division, a baseball shirt which said 9th Infantry on it. I said, "Okay." And it's like 5 o'clock. And they said, "Okay, you got a 10 o'clock curfew, but don't leave the post. And there's an enlisted man's club down the road that only Americans can get into. And just 10 o'clock curfew. Don't dare leave that base without a weapon. And don't leave anyway." So we go down to the enlisted man's club, and myself and a buddy that a friend that I'd made on the team, and we walk into the enlisted man's club, and it's made out of block and concrete, and there's a jukebox playing Beatles music, and there's a nice clean bar, and there's an American behind the bar, who's probably a soldier, behind the bar, said, "Where can I get you guys?" And I said, "Oh man!" So we get 2 beers, myself and the other guy, and we're drinking the beers and the Beatle music, and all of a sudden the door opens, and 3 American women come in the door, dressed in green uniforms, and they're obviously nurses. And I looked at the other guy, and I said, "Here we are drinking beer." I'm thinking of my guys back in the bush, if they could see me now, that just 5 hours ago I was in the bush, and here I am drinking a beer, and there's three they call them round eyes, American women, right here. So they pull up to the bar, and they're down the bar from us, and they probably didn't notice us 2 guys that are drooling down at the other end of the bar over these 3 American women. Long story short, within like 2 hours, we are partying our brains out with these 3 women, drinking and dancing and such. And I'm looking at my watch, and I had got pretty close to this one pretty blonde of the group. And it was getting like 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I had a 10 o'clock curfew. And I said, "Is there any place we can go to be alone and quiet?" And she looked at me, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. she goes, okay, but this is stateside sex, and it's going to cost you. And you could have knocked me off that chair with a feather.
So they were working girls.
And she didn't say sex. She described an anatomy of a lady, saying, this is stateside blank, and it's going to cost you. I never said another word. First of all, I had no money. Number two, I was so flabbergasted, but it immediately hit me that these American nurses, some of them came back with a lot of money in their account.
I guess so. Interesting story.
So that was one of the humorous things. And next day we played 2 games. We lost them both. The following day we lost a game, and the next thing I know, we're out of the truck back to the 40 miles back to my fire base, and they dropped me off at my 84th unit, and I'm filling sandbags within an hour. It was just, that's how weird the Vietnam experience was. Scenarios like that would happen.
Yeah. Just changed that fast. Boom.
Yeah. Oh. The attacks were at night, especially the mortar attacks. Everything would be at night. And it got to be so frequent, and a lot of times there were false alarms. But we'd be in the middle of the night, we'd be in the bunker. So here we are, early November now. Early November. This is right after the monkey incident. We literally were getting mortar attacked, and we could hear the rounds coming out of the tubes. Thoop, thoop, thoop. And you hear that noise, you knew they're still in the air. They haven't come down yet. The mortars had come out of the tubes, the enemy tubes. So people would be screaming, incoming, incoming. We would be running to the bunkers. Before the things even got to hit the ground, we would get to the bunkers with our weapons. So this one particular night, it's pouring rain out. We're under attack because the sirens would go off when we were under attack. And they sounded like volunteer fire departments around here all the time have these same type of sirens. They go off. It's called red alert. So everybody yelling, red alert, incoming. So on this particular night, it's pouring rain. I'm in the bunker. I'm cold, I'm tired. I haven't had a hot shower probably in 6 months. I did get a hot shower when I went on that softball tournament thing at Tonsanute. I finally got 2 hot showers. And I'm staring out of the bunker, and it's a sideways rain. It's raining so hard. Thinking I've probably done this 100 times now. 100 times. And I've yet to get wounded. I've been in scenarios where bullets flying by my head and mortar rounds near me, but I've never, not a scratch on me. And it occurred to me that it was November 2nd at like 2 in the morning, so it's my 21st birthday. So my 21st birthday I spent in a bunker under attack in Vietnam in a pouring monsoon. And so that's that night. We ended up not having any contact with any enemy because they would not do a ground attack on us. I don't know why, but they would do mortars, but not ground attack at Bearcat.
Did they ever hit anything?
They would hit the helicopters a lot, and they would hit our bunkers. But if they didn't get a direct hit on the tent, it would just hit on the ground. And we had so many sandbag walls around, they would just absorb the concussion. And it was like they were just throw them off just to harass us, fire these rounds in.
What kind of goes through your mind when, especially the first few times this happens? I mean, what are you thinking or feeling?
You're terrified, especially when you hear them come out of the tubes and they haven't hit yet. You don't know where they're coming in. You know they're up in the air and they're going to be coming down. And it's like the first time it happened, to me, it was like the experience driving, because I got my driver's license at 16, but driving in the winter on icy roads and losing control and doing a 180, 360, that feeling on the back of your neck goes up because you know you're going to hit something sooner or later, skidding like that. That feeling, well, imagine that feeling for hours at a time. And then when you're under attack, that's the feeling, the closest thing I can have relate to a normal person that I've never experienced it.
Does your mind remember the sensation still?
Oh yeah, because when I got home, and we'll talk about that after I got married and I had my first home down in South Side, the volunteer fire department down there had the same sirens as that I had in my fire base. And I would get up in the middle of the night on the ground from the still thinking I was under attack with those sirens. It took me a long time to get over those.
It was a triggering event.
So let's see, I talked about going out in the bush with my radio and Jeep.
Tell us about that radio. You said they're scramblers. How did they back then actually scramble? You didn't have digital radios, right? They were analog, I assume.
Right.
How did they actually scramble and unscramble?
Well, there's cards that slide into them that were like transistor cards, but I didn't know enough about what the intricate parts of the card were.
They were electronic, do you think?
Yes, and so they were numbered like K1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, and I had a safe that had all the cards for my batteries, for my battalion. And only a few radios had them. And I had them. And I had two of the radios again, and they had big whippy antennas on the back of the Jeep with a radio on each side. And I wouldn't get on the radio very often because it would be the commo officer would be the one getting on the radio. So I'd pull up my rig, and they'd love to see it, and they'd say, "Okay, I got it. Let me have this one." The other guy take the other one, and they'd be doing whatever missions and whatever they're doing stuff on it.
Mm-hmm. So you were the technician that made sure that it worked. They had the right cards.
Sure, it worked, and they had. Of course, if it didn't work, there's nothing I could do about it because we're out in the bush, and that's why you had two, because you had backup. Mm-hmm. But there had to be somebody with a scrambler on the other end to be able to understand it. If they didn't have those, they'd have to take the long method of sending it over the SOIs in code, which would take forever to decode the freaking message, if you can think about it.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's see. So that was my 21st birthday.
No cake, I assume.
No cake. No cake. Talked about my Tiger, and I talked about my...
How about the leadership, that your immediate command and so on? What was your thoughts on the folks that were leading your group?
So here's a big part of this. Is one of my biggest pet peeves. I already talked about what I call them jerks that all my sergeants were, right up until I got out of the service. But not only that, but the fellow soldiers, unless they're in your platoon. But so I want to back up a little bit more. So as soon as I got to Fort Riley and were put into a barracks, I made friends. And then when I got transferred to headquarters battery and I'm part of Commo, we made good friends. So my Commo platoon, there's 30 of us. And we got real tight. And we certainly knew our girlfriends' names and the letters in common and such. And that... about 4 months after we go in country, not even that, 3 months after we're in country in Vietnam, so that's February, March, April. So late April, one day, and they call about half my platoon, Campbell platoon, away for a meeting. They come back, and they all got transferred to other units around Vietnam. So after spending all this time now with these guys that were like brothers, they got to pack their bag, and the next day they're gone. I never see them again. They were like brothers. And what they call it transposing, because the Army and all their hindsight and such, didn't realize that when we landed on a ship that we all had the same date, just because there's 365 days that you spend in Vietnam to the day. So we're all going to expose or be sent back to the States on the same day. So that would leave my unit with 100% replacements if we all left the same day. So the only way to combat this is to go to other units around Vietnam, like the 1st Infantry Division, 25th and such. Say, give me some of your guys that are leaving sooner or later, so we get all these replacements in, stagger them in instead of one big spurge of replacing the whole unit. And so it broke our hearts. All these guys we befriended, like brothers, they're gone. After spending, what was that? It's over 12 months. So 16 months together, 14 months.
So using the lens of time, 50 years ago it's been now, or more, was that the best way to do it, or do you think they should have kept people intact and moved them as a unit?
Move them as a unit, which they do now. Mm-hmm. Even starting in the Iraq wars, the units they sent over there were from the same towns, same city. And they kept them together. Went over together, came home together. And they had parades going and stuff. That's another thing we're going to talk about my post-war scenario.
So the value of the camaraderie that you developed, they finally, nowadays they've understood what that meant. So
yes.
It was very counterproductive during the Vietnam War to do.
Extremely counterproductive.
Yeah, because you didn't know what to trust the new guys or not, or who they were.
Most guys in Vietnam went over there as replacements. So they would literally be in a commercial airliner, fly into Saigon, and go to a replacement center. It was like a big tent city, and they would wait there for a few days till they got assigned to a unit that needed, we need some riflemen over here, we need a wireman over here, we need a medic over here, and they would be assigned to that particular division, unit, no matter where it was, any place in Vietnam. So that's how 95% of the soldiers in Vietnam went to replacement things. We were different because we were the original landing on the beaches from the ships. We were different as a whole unit. They had trained together and such. So to divide us up was awful.
So when you started, yours was even more a tight brotherhood because you arrived as a unit. And after that, as you said, it was a constant replacement cycle.
Yeah. And just to give you an example, we'd look forward to mail call every day, 4:30. We could be out in the bush, and a helicopter would come in with an bright orange bag, big duffel bag, dropped us down, and that was mail call. And everybody loved mail call. So they'd sit around and Wilson, here's 3. And so they'd fill out all the envelopes and stuff. And sometimes we had these little tape recorders that not everybody had, but some had, and we get tapes from back in the States. And sometimes there would be music, and it'd be Motown music, stuff. We started having dance contests. And since I was from New York, I won my share of them. So that we looked forward to mail call. So we were really tight. We knew each other's girlfriends' name. Hey, did Joanne write you today? Did you get a Dear Jan letter, Wilson? We were cracking each other up, and it was just, we're brothers. And then they transposed us. It broke everybody's heart. It's like losing your family member.
Well, let me ask you this. When you signed up, you're fighting for your country. But when you were there, were you fighting for your country or more for each other? Like brotherhood, if you will.
Well, definitely for brotherhood. We would die for each other. I mean, if we were in a foxhole, we're not going to get out of that foxhole and leave them alone. Our buddies. But we were there. We're in it together, and we would fight. Everybody I knew, I could trust them. I'd want them in my foxhole. All my buddies, they can be in my foxhole, and they know they could count on me. That the fighting happened, that we were going to jump out of the foxhole and run. So we were tight.
Did you have any leaders that you really didn't like or you didn't trust or you didn't?
Most of them.
Really?
Yeah, and most of them deserved not being liked. To give you an example, our mess cooks. I remember in hindsight seeing where they talked about in Vietnam about people having steak all the time and beer. Well, they did give you 2 cans of beer every day, whether you wanted it or not, which I wouldn't drink. You try to get a hangover in Vietnam and wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning with a hangover and that heat. There's some guys that just drank their ass off, but not me. I wouldn't drink. And so we'd have, here, you want my beer, buddy? So I'd give it to the other guys down the tent. But I'm losing my train of thought. I must be getting tired. What were we talking about before?
We're talking about the camaraderie and of the troops and the leadership. You said there was some
leadership. Yeah. So the stakes. I was talking about the stakes. So they talk about all the stakes you get in Vietnam. I never had one stake in 12 or 360 days or something I spent in Vietnam. Never had one stake. And I vividly remember walking back from the mess tent one night, afternoon, because we ate about 4:30, 5 o'clock. Walking past, I go by the mess tent, and I look out there, and here's all the chefs, I say cookies, they're cooking steaks. They had about 50 steaks on a barbecue pit. I said, where? I knew what they were doing. Those are supposed to be steaks for the common soldier, like my platoon and stuff. They were hoarding them for themselves. They deserved, they were all regular Army. They said, oh, you're draftees. You're not getting them. I mean, that's a sample of what we had to put up with right there. Of them being regular Army and the sergeants amongst their little camaraderie. Screw the draftees. They ain't getting them. We'll eat these steaks. There's a perfect example in a microcosm of what.
And the leadership didn't stop that.
They should have stopped it. They should have chastised those cooks. And we constantly changed officers. And it seemed like every 2 months we'd have a new commanding officer with new lieutenants in charge of the platoons and stuff like that. You'd never get close to them. Hardly knew their names. So we talked about mail call.
What about your mail? Who would write to you when you were there?
I would get mail from a few of my male friends from back in high school, and of course my future wife would write me almost every day, and I'd write her. And my father used to write me all the time. He had perfect penmanship, and I would get these letters, and I would hardly write him back. And I loved him dearly, and I would write my girlfriend all the time, but I hardly wrote him back. And so I didn't get tons of letters, but I would get 2 or 3 from her a week. And such, and it got to the point where by late November, because I was a D-Rose date, they call it, what day you're expected to leave Nam, was January 11th, 1968. And believe me, you count down the days. And so I knew that I'm going to be in country back home on January 11th. We set up to get married on January 20th. It's like 10 days later, we're going to get married. I'm 21, she's 21. And 10 days after I get back from Nam, in hindsight, it was actually stupid. But you're not thinking straight. But anyway, so that was in November.
Do you start so you said this is November, so you're getting close to the end. Do you get worried about bad luck or it's a short timer problem?
2 things is the counting down the days, and not everybody, but most people had what they call a short timers calendar. So there's 365 days, and so you had this thing that was an outline, the profile of a woman on a piece of paper, and mark off. It was all done ahead of time, and they mass-produced numbers, all little squares inside, and each one would number from 365s to 1. The number 1 was right in the crotch area. So you just cross off the dates until they'd be all over the place, crossing off to the number 1. So when you had less than 90 days before your D-Rose date, you became a short timer. And a short timer meant that nobody talked to me, nobody messed with me. I only got 90 days, and I'm a short timer. And it used to be they'd come up with one-liners that would crack you up and say, "I'm so short, I haven't got time to talk to you right now." It'd be hilarious to come up with the greatest short timer line of the day. And that's what it felt. Once you got 90 days, you didn't want to be killed by an accident, because there were so many ways to die over there, from explosions, fire, and not to mention all the enemy things of mortars, snipers, grenades, hitting mines, just all military stuff. But there's other accidents that could happen just like here.
A car accident.
Just anything, the way you could die. And so I got 90 days before I'm back. Don't send me on a mission doing this or that and stuff. Get somebody else that's that short timer. And now I'm down to 45 days. And it's like on pins and needles that you're going to make it, because it's all for that getting to Saigon in a commercial airplane and that airplane lifting off. Until that airplane is out of harm's way of being rifle fire and stuff, you are not safe. You were not safe in Vietnam. Any place you could have got killed by the enemy at any time.
So let's reset. You were at Bearcat. When did, just to make a few markers, when did you go to the next location, and where again was that?
Okay, so mid-November. All this time from February to mid-November, I had 18 on-wheel artillery pieces, and the 4 tank-type pieces would constantly be going out of the fire base to different operations. And some of them never came back. They were gone forever.
Were there people you knew that didn't make it back? Friends or anybody like that?
Well, they didn't get killed, but they were out on operation. Mm-hmm. Like little villages in the middle of nowhere, they would set up a little tiny fire base. And they'd give it a name, and it would be there for... Maybe it was gone after we left. 6 months later, maybe they closed it up. I don't know. But for a duration, in that little hamlet, they would set up a little fire base with maybe 2 or 3 of my howitzers. And there's 6 in a battery. So maybe 2 would be there out of that particular battery. Okay, you're in Cantien, you're in An Lac, and you're over here. And infantry guys would be support of them. So they got 9-mile radius that they could set up there to protect themselves, as well as go on operations to search out the enemy. And so they would be constantly moving around and such. So it came to, and most of them were in the Mekong Delta. So now it's mid-November, and most of my artillery pieces, except the ones that look like tank, are gone. So they said, okay, start packing up, because we're moving to the Mekong Delta, which is 50 miles south of a fire base called Dong Tam, 15 miles south of Saigon. So we're 40 miles northeast in Bearcat, and we're going 50 miles south of Saigon. And so we get in a big convoy, and I've got my Jeep and with my scrambler radios, and I'm trailing a little trailer with bags, duffel bags and stuff in it, and we're in a convoy at 4 o'clock in the morning heading towards Saigon. And you can't have headlights and stuff, so you got like low lighting, and we're on a road with about 180 trucks. And we're going through Saigon, and Saigon is notorious for these roundabouts. And we're doing 30 miles an hour in convoy. And we're not stopping, because if you stop, you're a sitting duck. So we're going through Saigon. It's just starting to be dawn, and we're tired. And I'm by myself in this Jeep, and I fell asleep at the wheel, going around with these roundabouts. And on the edge of the round on the roads would be all these shacks that the Vietnamese built out of beer cans. They would open up the beer cans and get some plywood and build like little sheds and have that to be their little shops to sell whatever they sell, dead fish and such on the sides of the road. And I took out one of these sheds, and I woke up and stuff, but just got back on it, didn't do anything to my Jeep. Got back on the road because we were not stopping. And we're doing 30 miles an hour right through Saigon. Then we go down into the Dong Tam, pull in the base. And this was a base that hadn't been built up much yet, but the Navy was assigned to us. They had built a little marina there with the Navy SEALs and the patrol boats. And right across the road, we say, okay, here's where you guys are going to go. And we just built you 2-story barracks right there, all ready for you to go. And we're looking at, so 2-story barracks with cots. And no hot water, but barracks with cots with a roof on it, an actual metal roof. I said, oh man, this won't be bad. So immediately we had to build our bunkers. And my communication bunker was 4 sandbags wide and about 10 feet high with a square. And that it took tons of sandbags. And everybody had filling sandbags, building them up. It took us freaking 2 days, 3 days, busting our ass to get this thing built. The very first night, mortar attacks. And we had the bunkers to protect us, so we'd be laying on our cots. We finally got a barracks with lights and a cot with a mattress on it, and the sirens start going off red alert, and we can hear the thump, thump, thump of the mortar, enemy mortars coming out, and we can hear them exploding around us, but there's nothing real close. And we get into our bunkers, and they're starting to land next to our bunkers, and the bunkers are working great. They're absorbing, you wouldn't even know that it hit. Didn't even. As long as they're mortars, they weren't rockets. If they were rockets, we would have known it. But so this was like mid to late November, and remember my D-Rose is January 11th, so I'm counting the days off, and this happened almost every night. So I end up getting. So I'm just staying in the bunker. I slept in the bunker the last 45 days, and we would get hit almost every night. And only occasionally they would get a direct hit, would kill one of our guys. And usually with the artillery pieces were about a couple hundred yards down from us. And they targeted into the where the artillery pieces were.
So you saw a lot more incoming there than at Bearcat.
Bearcat was hardly any. And they would be at the other end of the base where the helicopters were. Here, they were coming in. Well, we had a small fire base anyway, but they were after the Navy guys, they were after us, and after artillery pieces. But there was a lot more enemy down there in the Mekong Delta. Mm-hmm. There's 8 million Vietnamese in the Mekong Delta, and we were a little fire base with 2,000 guys.
So blending in for your enemy was a lot easier because of the dense population. I mean, how do you know who's who if you were?
Yeah, well, our fire base had the berm on it, and the friendlies weren't getting in our berm. Mm-hmm. So I don't hardly ever remember going outside the berm down in Dong Tam unless we're delivering my SOIs and such. And so I wasn't interacting with the Vietnamese at all. Mm-hmm. There were some guys that got on remote hamlets with fire bases that there'd be a village right next to them, and they started making friends with some of the locals and such. But we never got that, or at least to me, I never got in that scenario. So that got through the last few days of Nam, the last 30 days and stuff. I was horrified. And I'm saying, get me out of here. I mean, I've gone this far. I haven't been hit. It was a miracle I got hit. I had sandbags next to me. The mortar rounds had gone off, and I got a piece of mortar downstairs in a jar. It's an enemy mortar. You can see the top of it. It's part where the fuse screws in. It went right by my head and went into the sandbag next to my head. And it was a pretty good-sized piece of shrapnel. So if that hit me, I would have been dead.
Yeah.
right next to my head. And then I talked about with the tank, the bullets going by me. And down in the Mekong Delta, that November 26th, I think it was, we're really in a heavy attack. And just down from us, about 3 miles, was one of the infantry units. They had another artillery unit with the smaller howitzers that is in a firefight, and it's nighttime, and the guy wins the Medal of Honor. That's how big that firefight was. His name is Sammy Davis from the 4th Artillery that particular night, because his fire base and my fire base were under a heavy attack. His was just a small, not even a fire base yet. They just pulled in and set up the howitzer with the sandbags, and they got under attack immediately, even in the daytime. I went all through the night, and they lost quite a few guys, and he rescued, if his story, you ever look at it on Medal of Honor stories, it's a wonderful story. But I was just 3 miles away from him that night.
So it got pretty intense down there, for sure. I don't think the average person definitely doesn't know the terror from incoming artillery and what it's like. It's I can't imagine it's even something you can describe.
Well, I only had mortar attacks. I never experienced rockets or enemy artillery like they did up the Marines up in the DMZ. That they actually had artillery rounds coming at them. And under big attacks, they would get the rockets. One thing I didn't mention, that when I was in training back in the States, they would try to get one person from each battalion, not battery, but each battalion, to learn how to fire certain weapons. And one of the weapons was these disposable rocket launchers called LAWs, and they're made out of plastic. And you flip up the sight, and there was a rocket inside it about this long. It had a trigger on it. You only get one, and you just take it and break it over your leg. And no one wanted to volunteer. I went, so I show up at the firing range, and he goes, "Where's the other guys?" It's just me, the only one. So, well, you lucky guy. I got to fire off about 50. They had a big pile of them, and they said, "These all got to get fired off." I said, "Oh, hey, no problem." So by the time I was done, I was real good at being able to shoot these LAWs, disposable rockets.
They were intended for
anti-tank and stuff, whatever, or not, wasn't anti-tank. We wouldn't see tanks down in the Delta. But, I mean, the Viet Cong machine gun nest or something, I mean, that's what these things are meant for.
Yeah.
And they're real light, so that you could carry it on your shoulder real easy.
A disposable weapon, basically.
Disposable, made out of plastic. The rocket was the heaviest part of it.
Yeah.
So I'm just counting the hours till I get on an arm, and waiting for, we called it the Big Bird and the Silver Bird. And here's another story that I forgot, because a big part of my book is that we would be on just before dark, at dusk, we would be sitting on our sandbags before we go into our bunker. And occasionally it would be the eastern sky, we'd see the sun reflecting off an airplane. It was a silver airplane. And we knew what it was. It was a commercial airliner. And the only commercial airliners were taking troops back home from Vietnam. And so the returning troops were on that airplane. And we would look at it and say, "You lucky bastards, you're going to make it." You know what? But God bless you, because in 4 months I'm going to be on that plane. And I remember when I got home hearing that song, Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water. They talk about "Fly on, Silver Bird." And I remember saying, when I was in Nam, I said, "Fly on, Silver Bird," because in 4 months I'm going to be on. I remember saying that in Nam, and lo and behold, in that song, it talks about "Fly on, Silver." He says "Silver Bird." "Fly on, Silver Bird" in the song. And there's the sounds of explosion, because artillery rounds would be starting to go off for the harassment. And it was just like Simon or Art Garfunkel, or I think it was Paul Simon, wrote the song. It was like he was there with me. He knew that the artillery rounds were going off, and we saw the silver bird in the horizon. And it would bring tears to my eyes when I hear that song still. Brings tears to my eyes.
Yeah.
It's like they were right on with whoever wrote that song of our experience, my experience in Vietnam.
Now tell us about I think we're getting close to the end of your service. What was your last day there like, or your last few days?
Of insert in Vietnam?
Yeah, before you were getting on that Silver Bird.
Yeah, so we're under attack. The sirens have gone off. I haven't heard any rounds hitting yet, and I haven't heard the mortars going, but the sirens are going off, so I know we're under attack. And we're sitting in our bunker, and I got my M16 with 200 rounds and some grenades. And I'm saying, is tonight the night that we're going to get ground attack? Because it could be any time. Every night that I was in Nam, we could have had a ground attack. And that was my biggest fear, being overrun. We don't have enough bullets to kill them all. Because they could have division, 15,000. They could have a division out there. We would know it until they attacked us. And there's only 3 guys in a bunker to stop them. It's not like they're going to stop them. So that was a big fear. So I'm sitting in the bunkers and hearing the sirens going off. All of a sudden, a guy sticks his head in the bunker and says, "Wilson, your orders just came in. You're going home." So here it is, like 9 o'clock at night. We're under attack, and they're telling me my orders came in. I'm going home. I said, "What do you want me to do? Get out of there." But I said, "Okay." So the next morning, I grabbed my duffel bag and my rifle, say goodbye to the friends I had made, get in a helicopter, and there's like 4 helicopters. We're in like a little squadron here, and we're going back to Bearcat. And as we lifted off and we got higher, I got pictures. I'm taking pictures of the fire base, and I'm looking at this fire base in my 9th Division. I just poured my life into this 9th Infantry Division for almost 2 years. And this is the last time I'm ever going to see them. Last time I see my buddies. Last time I see my 9th Infantry Division that I love. And we landed Bearcat. We land, and they tell us the next day Bob Hope's coming in to Bearcat to do the Bob Hope show. So the next day I get to see Bob Hope at Bearcat. And a couple of days later, they drive us into Saigon to Tan Son Nhut. And I was in a tent for 2 days, and they assign you a flight, and you know at the exact what day and time you're going to be flying out 2 days ahead. And we're in a tent again. I'm in a tent in Saigon, and knowing that I got 2 days left, and I can hear small arms fire in the distance. And I can hear sirens going off in the distance. And all the guys in the tent with me saying, "Holy shit. So get us out of here. We got 48 hours. Get us out." So the next morning, it's my last day. And there's a monkey on a chain right outside my tent. And I grab a cracker and I try to give him, and he bites my finger, almost bites my finger off. I said, "Son of a bitch," I kicked him. Went back into the tent and said, "That's it. I'm staying in the tent the rest of the day." So I just laid there in that cot. A guy sticks his head into the tent and says, "Okay, guys, it's your turn." I'm still in my ripped fatigue. All my fatigues are ripped and dirty and stuff. I'm still in them. They didn't even give us a uniform. And we go to the Tan Son Nhut Air Base there, and they pull up a commercial airliner. They pull up the steps to go up it. I go up there, and we go up the steps, and I got my orders in an envelope, and I got my duffel bag. A duffel bag with my baseball glove in it, and a picture of my future wife, and shaving kit and underwear and stuff. And there's 3 beautiful Caucasian stewardesses greeting us. And so it's great and stuff. We get into the plane, and within seconds, or certainly a couple of minutes and stuff, they close that door, and the pilot starts taxiing that plane. And we're on the runway, and he makes a turn, never stops. From the time he just got those wheels, never stopped, made the turn, pushed those throttles down, and almost went straight up in the air so he could evade any small arm fire, any mortar that might try to get us. And we're saying, "Okay, please God, get this baby airborne, get this bird airborne." And until that's up where you can get, and or out of fire, you don't feel safe. But once it leveled off, I mean, that's when the cheers started going, cheering and applause. But not me. I could look down there and I could see the jungle, and I could see the Mekong Delta, and I could see the brown spots, and I knew that was Army fire bases. And there was guys looking up my airplane, just as I had looked up on other guys' airplanes, and probably saying, "Fly on, Silverbird," because I'm going to be on it. And I just saluted them. I actually wept. Because some of these guys are going to become some of the 30,000 that died after I left. And I knew it. I knew that the guys looking up my airplane, some were going to die. And I wasn't smiling. I wasn't jumping up and down. So I was sad. Happy I was going to make it home, but sad for these other guys. And then the lights went out. It was dark, and we're heading east. And it took like, I think it's 20 hours. We stopped in Guam and refueled, and coming in to Travis Air Base, I guess it was, in San Francisco. It's pitch black. I don't know what time it was, but it was pitch black. It's January 11th, January 10th or January 11th, 1968. We land, and it had been raining. And they opened the door and they pulled up the steps to the plane, and it's raining out. It's raining out and it's cold. It's freezing in San Francisco, and I still got my fatigues on, and no jacket, no. And they point to some buses about 150 yards away or so. So we had to run to the buses and get wet with our orders in an envelope that are getting wet. No umbrellas, no coats, nothing. Get in a bus like a normal bus you'd see. And that was our first homecoming for the first 20 minutes of being home. And then we pull up to a building, one gigantic building, one-story building that had cubicles all along the edge of the wall. And they said, take your orders, go to each cubicle, you'll process out, and you'll get to the paymaster, the last one, and then you'll be free to go and follow whatever orders you got. So we're all looking around saying, okay, we're wet, and so we'll go over this, start over here, you guys start over there, so we're not all backed up in cubicles. And so like two guys to a cubicle thing, and you could process it out, because you had to process out for medical, process out for all the different cubicles. I forgot what they were. And finally, and then you get new uniforms too. So they issue the new uniforms, and I got a brand new dress uniform, fit beautiful. I'm nice, deep, dark tan. Brand new greens, dress greens uniform with all my medals, and a raincoat. And I go to the paymaster. He hands me $800. Okay, great. And say, here's your orders. You got to report to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, in 3 weeks. And here's $800, and good luck.
Cash money?
Yeah, cash money. And I said, okay, well, how do we get out of here? He said, over there. I look over there, and there's a door in the wall with a little exit sign over it. I open the door, and it's raining out. Not pouring rain, but raining. So I got my raincoat, and I got my duffel bag, and it looked like it was an abandoned city at about 5 o'clock in the morning, where I was. And I walked up to the front curb where the other road was, and I'm standing there in the rain, no umbrella. And I said, this is great, no homecoming, nothing. And finally a cab comes around. I flag down the cab, takes me to San Francisco Airport. It took me 2 days to fly back to Syracuse. And so I'm by myself, of course, and I stayed in a motel in Chicago, waiting for my connecting flight, because we always fly military standby because it's cheap. And you got to wait till a flight opens up to get military stamp. So I come back into Syracuse. I land at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm expecting my family and maybe a little something that they welcome, because I can't be the only guy coming back from Nam. They must have something at Hancock Airport. So I get off the airplane, and it's cold because it's January 11th or something like that. And I walk in the airport, and it's just my future wife, my mother, and my 10-year-old brother. And I said, "Where's Dad?" And he says, he's so distraught he couldn't come. So we get in the car, go back to my house on the south side, and I walk in the house, and I'm on my dress screens and stuff now, and he's in the doorway shaking. And he looked like he was 90 years old. He had lost so much weight and was so emotionally drained for his son, which he and I were very close to be in combat, because he had been watching each night about all the battles the 9th Infantry Division was in, and he had it on the dining room table. He had all the articles of the 9th Infantry Division, the battles they were in and such. And both of us just started crying, like bawling like children. And I took my uniform off, and I had to go back to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, after I got married the following few days. And I had 4 more months to serve out the country, but I went to Fort Campbell, and I lived off a base at Clarksville, Tennessee, in an apartment with my new wife. And I would drive to the base each day at Fort Campbell, and it was in a make-work type of scenario where they'd give you a little cubicle, sit there, and we'll let you know if we got anything for you to do. And all the other soldiers were returnees from Vietnam, too. So it's not like you're going to say, "Hey, welcome back." Nobody cared. Nobody wanted to talk to you. They didn't want to know anything about your family. They were still decompressing themselves. And my first day back from being at Fort Campbell, I get back home, turn on the TV, and all hell's breaking loose in Vietnam. It's the Tet Offensive. My fire base, all of Saigon, are under attack. Almost every fire base in Vietnam is under attack. Saigon's under attack. And that lasted for 10 days. And all hell's breaking loose in Vietnam. So now I'm worried about my buddies that are still there. Sometimes I'm wishing that I was back there fighting with them. I'm worried about them. At the same time, I didn't want to die. But it was quite disturbing. And we go back to the base during the day. No one would talk about it. They don't want to know anything about Nam. They've been through it. They want to decompress. They want to put it behind them.
So there was no, if you will, outplacement, counseling, advice,
Zero.
Anything to help you?
Zero. I never talked to a person my whole time, and coming back. So the days I had May 17th, May 19th was the day I was supposed to be. My 2 years was up. Orders come in May 17th. I'm to be discharged. So it was a typical beautiful spring day, May 17th. I got my car with my wife. We were loaded up. I go to the base, sign out. They gave me some last pay, and I'm on my way back to Syracuse. In civvy clothes, all I had to remind me of the military was my dress uniforms and they call them low quarters, is your dress fancy shoes, and my saucer hat, and an envelope with my DD-214 and my discharge papers. That's it. Took us 2.5 days or so to get back to Syracuse, and I put the military behind me. So one thing I forgot to mention was how I felt about what people might be thinking back at home about my service in Nam, about the constant in harm's way, if you will. So right after we had arrived at Firebase Bearcat with the empty bulldozed area after digging our foxholes and putting the tents up, the next day the trucks would, well actually that day, the trucks would be coming in, towing our howitzers and full of our gear, like our duffel bags and other equipment and stuff. And the howitzers would put the sandbags around them, and they would aim their howitzers in. And as this was happening, the only sound we could hear in our little area was the sound of picks and shovels filling the sandbags and the sound of the dump trucks coming through towing our stuff. So I'm looking around the fire base, and it was like a beehive of activity. Just everybody digging and filling sandbags, and the artillery guys are getting their ammunition ready, and the rounds ready, and the ammo ready. And I'm thinking that, okay, United States government, you wanted me, you wanted us, you got us. We're here, we will do a great job. We have an enormous pride in ourselves and our unit. And we know that every day we are in harm's way, whether it be friendly fire, enemy attacks from missiles or rockets, mortars, bullets, mines, and accidents like fires and missed rounds, short rounds, all different times of way to die over here. But what we expect when we get back to the country is that we'll have parades and respect and have it made the rest of our lives. That's how other soldiers in other wars have been treated. And that's what we expect. And frankly, I couldn't have been farther from the truth of what was going to happen to us when we came back. So during our duration, our tour in Nam, we would hear stories about returning soldiers in airports and train stations being spit on and being made to feel ashamed and disrespected. And it certainly took its toll on us, where we become disheartened and discouraged. So as we became short-timers, it came close, but we still thought we might, when we get home, that we might still have some parades, celebration, and such, and that the American public would welcome us back. And as I'm taking off on this airplane, I had no idea that, first of all, that I had invisible wounds that I'm taking with me, even though I never got actual wound where blood came out. I had invisible wounds that I would find out later, such as PTSD and Agent Orange leukemia.
I believe you said there was an incident. Do you recall Agent Orange being in your presence, or was it something that was there that you weren't aware of at any point during your service?
So at Bearcat, almost every day, every once a week, helicopters would come by on the strip between the berm, which is that big dirt wall, to the jungle line, and constantly spray it. Because in Vietnam, everything grows by the minute there with the climate and such. And if weeds and bushes and stuff grew up, the enemy could have a sneak attack on us coming from the jungle line. So they had to constantly spray it with Agent Orange. And so once a week, we would be in our bunkers, because they'd usually come around dusk, and we'd be in our bunkers, and the stuff would come down like mist into our bunkers. And so we would be exposed to that.
I guess so. So you were getting a direct contact.
We would actually walk out on the strip looking for booby traps and such occasionally, not a lot, but occasionally, and that stuff would get all over our boots. So our boots would be saturated with that.
So were there actual puddles of it, or how did it?
Not puddles. It wasn't that thick. It looked like dew. Dew. It was like dew. I have pictures of it that I took that it looked like it looked like dew across the whole strip, the dirt strip from the bunkers to the jungle line. So the expectations was we'd have some type of homecoming. We certainly had heard horror stories of the bad treatment of Vietnam returnees. But I never thought it would be that bad, and I didn't know that I had invisible wounds that would affect me the rest of my life.
So that's the part, this is the reflections phase of the interview that we'd really like to dig into as deeply as you want to, for as long as you want to, because this is a very important part of the story that needs to be told in hopes that others will learn from it, our leaders hopefully. So I encourage you to talk about the ways that your war experience changed you, how it changed your relationships, things like that.
Yeah, so I had this, starting in Nam when we were under attack, the way I dealt with either under attack or the fear that we would have at nighttime. So I never feared during the day. It was just at night. Once it got dark, we knew we could get attacked. That I would put it in the back of my mind, and I would put it, and I called it my imaginary black box in the back of my mind. And I just kept putting everything in my imaginary black box. And I stuck it back in there, and that was that until after I got married and in a house in south side of Syracuse, that the volunteer fire department alarms would go off, and then I'd start getting flashbacks and actual nightmares. But I wanted to put the military behind me. I never thought about it. I was working for a couple of years as a draftsman. People that I worked with in my a big architectural firm never even knew I was a Vietnam vet. There was so much unrest in college campuses and in the country about the Vietnam War, and a lot of it, 50% of the country was negative about it, and I didn't want anything part of it. And so just pretend I never went there, and I just went on with my life. And again, I was a pretty good baseball player, and went back to school and went to Syracuse University. And at first I had a hard time academics, but then I hit books hard and ended up on Dean's List.
What were you studying at SU?
Business school. So I got my School of Management. My major was marketing. Marketing and transportation. I had a dual major. And
well, you went there as a boy, and you came home as a man. Just keep telling us more about how it affected your relationships with, for example, your wife, which would be the most immediate person that you would interact with.
Yeah, so I should mention that I was playing semi-pro baseball as soon as I got back because I wanted to play baseball hard. My father would come to this was 1969, 68, would come to my baseball games, and we would be in the state league baseball league. And I was a pitcher, and I was throwing no-hitters and one-hitters, and I started having scouts coming around. I was the first team all-city pitcher in 1964 for Central New York. And so anyway, my father never missed a game. And we wouldn't talk about the war and such. And so I went back to, after a couple of years, I went back to college. Or I should say, he died. My father died in April of '69, and my whole baseball team came to his funeral. And I remember at his gravesite, as they put the coffin into his grave, looking at his headstone, that just behind his headstone was one of my buddies that died in Vietnam. Of the three guys that I mentioned in my book that were my buddies that died, Dave Dumas was a Marine that died, and there's his headstone, 3rd Marines, right there.
What cemetery are they buried in?
Assumption Cemetery, here in Syracuse. So again, I've tried to put everything behind me, And when I went back to school at Syracuse was very vocal in anti-Vietnam demonstrations. And I would look at all these, usually rich kids, and I considered them spoiled brats. Mm-hmm. They had no idea what they were talking about. Freedom isn't free, and there's men boys, that paid sacrifices so you could just do what you're doing. And they had the audacity to spit at us and to shame us and such. And I didn't let them know I was a Vietnam vet my whole 3 years at Syracuse.
But in a way, it was a war that was different than others because people that were wealthier could afford to send their kids to school for 4 years and 6 years and PhDs. And the ones that didn't have the resources may not have been in college and were more susceptible to having to go with the draft. So it was like a bifurcation economically as well, I would say.
So I would get increasingly aggravated with the American public of their lack of appreciation for boys that sacrificed for your freedom and how unappreciative they were, to the point, to me, one thing being indifferent, another thing to shame us. So I got little tolerance for it. I couldn't be around these people, but I had to go to class all the time. And I would hear girls, mostly wealthy girls that were probably in the airport that flew to Bahamas or something on break, to come back and say, oh yeah, we saw a soldier, we were spitting at him and stuff. And they were proud of it, of how they could shame the soldiers, returning soldiers. And I just didn't really want to have anything to do with them.
Did you seek refuge with any other Vietnam veterans that you knew? Or?
No, I was, my typical class day, I had 2 part-time jobs and played a varsity sport at Syracuse, being baseball. And because I was newly married, and I had no time for any social life at all. And I would get in my apartment at 7 o'clock at night, and for 2 hours hit the books every night, and got on Dean's List and got my way through school because it was tough for me. I'd been out of school for a long time. I wasn't the greatest student in high school either.
What was your wife's name?
My first wife's name was Joanne.
And did you have children?
We tried to have children for 7 years of marriage, and unsuccessful. We finally adopted a girl at 3 years old because Joanne was a registered nurse, and she became friends with a lot of good doctors, and one doctor was a GYN, and it had a lady that wanted to give her baby up, and we adopted my daughter Jacqueline at 3 days old. And a month later, she got pregnant, and we had my son, John. So Jacqueline was our adopted daughter, and my son, John, was. So they're 9 months apart. That was fun, having two little toddlers.
Do they live around here? Or?
Well, my daughter, Jacqueline, lives in Bend, Oregon. She's an earth science teacher. Her email address is treehugger4life. She's a tree hugger. And my son John lives in Syracuse, and he owns a computer company. Mm-hmm. And I have grandkids, and so they're very proud of me and my military service, especially after on in flight, honoring me.
Talk more about how it affected your relationship with your friends and your family here.
Well, not many of them knew I was in the Army because I didn't see many of them. After I got married, we went our separate ways. When I first graduated from Syracuse, I went to work for Armstrong Industries out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, as a salesman selling acoustical ceilings. And they sent me to Oklahoma City, of all places. I didn't even know where that was. I didn't know there was such an Oklahoma City.
Well, I lived there for a little while myself.
And I was there for like 3 months, made my quota for the whole year in 3 months. And since my father had died, my brother, who was only 15 years old, was living with my mother, who was quite ill, mentally ill. And he called me and was beside himself. And living with her, and I knew I had to come back to Syracuse. So I had to leave the company and came back to Syracuse.
Well, what year is that about? No?
That is 1974. No, the winter of 70, late December 73 is when I came back. And I went to work estimating contracts because I worked for an architect. I knew how to read plans. But I had my bachelor's degree, and I went to work for doing estimating for contractors until I opened up my own, one of my good friends from when I was 12 years old, we won the state championship in Little League. And one of the guys on that team was Bob Donovan, that got killed in Vietnam. Another guy on the team was John Bartolo, that was a good friend of mine, that went to work for a computer company right out of, he went to Cornell. And I used to play golf with him, and he would tell me about this great company he hooked up with here in town. And I said, geez, that's just what I wanted to do, sell high-price equipment and such. And he's selling large IBM mainframes and such. And luckily, he gets me an interview with the job and stuff, and I get hired. And I was in heaven, selling multi-million-dollar complex equipment, selling and leasing IBM computers, new and pre-owned. And it was a fast track and unlimited income, unlimited expense account. And if you're a good salesman, you could make $500,000 a year, type of stuff. Back in the 70s. This is back in 1978. I got hired on my birthday, November 2nd, 78. And they hired me for 30 days without pay, because there was a base salary, and to see how I do. And I went at it full bore. 1979, I was Salesman of the Year. 1980, I was number 2. Number 81, I'm Salesman of the Year. And I'm making bucks like I never thought I'd make. And I'm building new homes, English Tudor houses in Manlius, and have cottages up in the Thousand Islands and Grady White boats and country clubs, and I am in heaven. And never gave a thought about the service. Put it behind me. Never heard of the VA hospital. All I heard about the VA hospital, that it was like a slaughterhouse, that you didn't want to end up in the VA hospital. And I never had to use them for medical or any issues. And I didn't have any issues. And I was living a fantastic dream life with 2 kids and my wife, and my own, working for this company. And that went on until 85, so that's November 78 to February 85.
So all this time, everything you put in that psychological black box was still in there?
Still in the black box, undisturbed. I still have nightmares, and my nightmare is, I have this nightmare still this day. And then nightmares, I'm in the Bearcat Berm, and it's around midnight, and it's pitch black. And just as I had feared, we're under ground attack. And there's thousands of Viet Cong coming out of the jungle line, attacking us. Thousands, with fixed bayonets. And there's only 3 guys to a bunker, and I could look to the left and right of me, and the bunkers are being overrun. And I'm yelling to the guys behind. I've already shot up all my 200 rounds. And I'm yelling to the guys behind me, more ammo, more ammo. And I look up, and there's 2 Viet Cong with their rifles pointed at my chest, and they fire. And that's how my nightmare ends. I get that nightmare to this day. And just being overrun is the nightmare that I had about it. So then I would keep that in my black box, but occasionally, and less, it would reoccur until later in my life. And the Iraq War triggered a lot. So up till 85, I'm working for somebody else, making a lot of money. And I got so good at it that I said, I can do this on my own. I went out on my own. I became the 2nd fastest company growing in Central New York for the Chamber of Commerce, and got that award.
What was the name of the company?
Ontario Investments. Doing the same thing on IBM computers, buying and leasing. Some bigger clients in Niagara Mohawk, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and that's just in Syracuse, and I was all over the Northeast. and I was doing very well, very well. And that was until my brother, who was 10 years younger than me, at 17 years old, left with his buddies and took off to California, and he became a druggie. And I was estranged from him for 6 years or so. Never saw him, never heard from him. And so let's see, in 1988, I'm in San Francisco working on a deal with Niagara Mohawk for financing $10 million worth of power pole type equipment. And I said, I'm going to look up my brother. I look up my brother. He's in the hospital dying of AIDS. So I visited him at like 8 o'clock at night. He dies at 1 o'clock in the morning. I hadn't seen him in at least 6 years, type stuff. So I came back. I was pretty distraught. And this is 88. And I felt overwhelmed because my company was a small company. I was doing well, but I wore all the hats. I was the president. I was the head of sales, head of finance, accounting. I delegated HR, but I was just wearing a lot of hats, and I was under pressure of meeting the overhead. And so the big company I'd worked for, called CIS, went bankrupt. Some friends I had made there, one of them calls me up and said, would you consider us become partners? And I made the fatal error of allowing 3 of them to come in and buy into my company. But anyway, I kept all the stuff in the back of my head in the black box. And just as a couple of years later, as after I did this and realized I made a huge mistake, the Iraq War starts. And all over the TV is about our country is going over and fight Saddam Hussein, and he's got weapons of mass destruction. And I can just envision thousands of our soldiers dying in a battle, in one battle, that they could weapons of mass destruction. They could lose 100 guys in an instant. And one of my best friends that I talked about that was in the 1st Cav the year before I got drafted, had become a plumber, hated it, joined the Air Force National Guard here in town, is part of the National Guard that's being sent to Iraq. And I lost it. All of a sudden, when they started talking about guys dying, and guys would die and they'd come back and they'd show the funerals and the caskets, my black box opened up and all that stuff that I had held back come pouring out. And I got to the point so bad I couldn't. I was used to making presentations of Fortune 500 in a room with the whole board of a Fortune 500 company by myself, making those presentations that I could hardly talk in coherent sentences. And I'm saying, what is happening to me? And anyway, the Iraq War goes through, finally ends, but I still couldn't go on like I was. And I was on a golf course one day, and I met a guy that was a vet, and she saw I was depressed, and because I got depressed and was drinking, I ended up leaving my wife and kids, and ended up in a nasty divorce, ending up having to sell my company, and all the things in the black box are coming out. And he said, I think I think you should go to the VA hospital, and they've got a great one here in Syracuse. So I went to the VA hospital, and the first doctor I saw. Well, let me talk about the day I walked in the VA hospital. I hadn't been to that VA hospital since the day my father died, because he died in the VA hospital. And that was like 1969. So this is 1998, maybe 2000. I forgot. Whenever the Iraq stuff was going on. And so the guy I saw was a physician's assistant, a nurse practitioner. And they took all kinds of blood work, and he said, I think you got problems. I think you got PTSD. So long story short, I ended up seeing a bunch of people that interviewed me, and they validated that I had PTSD.
And that's 30 years after you were actually there.
Yeah, because my black box opened up and everything came out, and I couldn't, I just, seeing on TV when they would show funerals, and guys coming back, and coffins, and the send-offs, going to war, I see wives, mothers and wives, in uniform, with a weapon. They're going to go into combat. And I just lost it. So more Americans are going to die, and the American public, most of them don't even care. And now we're sending reservists. What's going to happen next when they're out of reserve? They're going to reinstitute the draft. And anyway, I lost it, and so I coped. It was working, selling real estate and doing other things, but trying to resurrect another computer company. But it was, I got by. And so then, but when I started going to the VA hospital, and to be able to get the VA hospital where they would pay for it, you had to get approved for a disability. And they were looking at my blood work, and they said, "There's something wrong, something I don't like in your blood work." And he said, "I'm going to keep checking it. We'll see what happens." So after a year or so, because every 6 months I was getting my blood work taken, he said, there's something I want you to go to oncology. I go to oncology, and they take some tests, and they set me down and say that you've got chronic lymphocytic leukemia. And when were you in that? I said 67 and 3-core. 3-core was where Bearcat was for most of it. And he goes, they pulled out a piece of paper, and it showed the cores of operation in Vietnam, and they showed 3-core where Bearcat was. So a paragraph that said, this 3-core received the greatest concentration of spraying of Agent Orange in Vietnam. And in 1969, Nixon stopped using Agent Orange because soldiers were getting sick from it. So, and they said, well, this is B-cell CLL. This is what all the Vietnam guys get, this particular type of leukemia, B-cell. You got it. And that particular unit you're in, and a lot of guys already died from it. So they said, the bad news is it's incurable. But the good news is you got chemo and bone marrow transplants. And he said, a lot of these guys live like a few years with this. And he said, the average guy's 7 years. And this was 2011, January 2011. He said, we're not going to start chemo yet. We're going to watch because you're right on the borderline of needing chemo. And after, that was 2011, and October 2015 is when I really spiked up to 200,000 plus in my white count, where they gave me chemo, 6-month chemo infusion, and I responded really good to the chemo, and it brought my white count way down, and I've been in remission since, even though as we speak it's starting to go back the other way, and I may need chemo again.
I think there's a story that you had relative to acquiring service from the VA that was a bit of a challenge. Can you tell us about your challenges with the VA and how well they did or didn't serve you?
Yeah, so when I got diagnosed with PTSD, President Obama had made a dictate that people with PTSD, that it wasn't because of one incident, like you happen to have the guy next to you killed or something, but it was a buildup of all that constant year of night after night of worried about the terror being overrun and such, that it took a toll. And they recognized those guys as well for PTSD. And you could get a disability rating for PTSD. If it's really severe, it could be 100%, or if it's slight, it could be 10% or something. And I said, okay, well, I'll try to get it. I'll put in for it. and maybe I'll get something for it. And because if you get a certain amount, you get a little money from the VA, as well as you get, if you get 30% disability, you get accepted into the VA, and they pay your medical expenses. So I put it in, but months later is when I got diagnosed with CLL, and they verified it was from the service. And Obama had also dictated that CLL type of leukemia from a Vietnam vet, they would give 100% disability, permanent and total too. So I knew that if I put my paperwork in, that I'll be accepted to the VA for 100% permanent and total disability, which you get money from the VA every month, and you get all your medical bills paid, including your wife's medical bills. So I put all my paperwork in, and let's say it was February, March, I think it's February 4th, I think, is the date. And months go by, and I don't hear anything. Weeks and months are going by. I should be getting a letter in the mail saying, okay, you got CLL, it's been verified, you're accepted. Nothing. So finally, in like August or September, it was September, I'm telling the VA, said, how come I haven't been accepted, Syracuse VA? They said, well, you got to go to Buffalo. Buffalo is the office that handles the ratings for upstate New York. The next day, I put a suit and tie on, like I used to, for presentations at Fortune 500 companies. So I looked like a sharp businessman. And I drove to Buffalo at that office in my suit. I came in that office and said, I'm not leaving this building. Do you find my file? And tell me why I'm not getting my rating for my thing. So a guy come down and said, okay. And an hour later, they come down and say, we can't find your file, which is the horror stories you hear about the Army and the service. Can't find your file. I said, well, I'm not leaving this building till you find my file. So he went back upstairs, and an hour or so later, he comes down, he said, we solved the problem. There's two files. One when you filed for PTSD, and one for you filed for CLL, and we found them. And I said, okay. And he said, all right, so we got them, we'll process them. So 2 weeks later, I get my approval, which I talked about in my book. I got a phone call from the Military Order of the Purple Heart, which is one of the service organizations that help veterans, saying, okay, you got it done. You got approved for 100% disability, which it made my day, of course, because I knew I was going to get a big check from the VA, as well as monthly payments that would help me and help my wife, because I was unable to work. That was so because of my PTSD and such. And but the VA hospital was 180 degree from what I thought it would be. I thought it would be a slaughterhouse. Turned out that they saved my life. And they treated me like a rock star there because of my 100% disability, and being with leukemia, with the IV unit and such. And I befriended a few doctors there that genuinely took care of me. And I love the VA now. Syracuse VA Hospital, I think, is the number one rated VA hospital in the country.
Yeah, we've heard good things about it, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Okay. Let me ask you, how has did your experience impact your feeling about the military and our political leadership? What's the takeaway? What's the message to them, so they could, if they ever listen, get better?
Yeah, so the main theme is that freedom is not free, and there's a large percentage of this country that has no idea of what soldiers, men and women, have done up until this point, for the sacrifices they've made so you could be free. They don't have a clue of what these people went through. There's families out there that have never had one service member serve this country. All it is me, gimme. What can the country do for me? Instead of, what have you ever done for your country? And I love this country and it's the republic it stands for. And to me, I love Arlington. I'm a big American history fan. If you go to Arlington National Cemetery and the Vietnam Memorial, to me, they're hallowed ground, watching over our heroes. And I think every American citizen should visit those memorials and cemeteries. And they will be a more complete American if they visit that Arlington Cemetery.
You know, in this day and age, we've had people who've disrespected the flag in many different ways, football players and others. We always travel with an American flag. When you see the flag, what does it mean to you? What's the feeling it brings out?
You may have seen the flag in my driveway.
I did.
It's a brand new flag. I change it about every 3 months because it gets so weather beaten. And you have to burn the flags, the old ones and such. But you never see an American flag being disparaged in my presence, because I'd be all over it. And it's, to give you an example, my great-great-grandfather fought in the Civil War, lost half his left arm. I think I talked about it? I think I did. In that battle, whoever held the colors in his infantry unit, and any infantry in the Civil War, when you're in combat, it was an honor to hold the colors. And if you got shot, another guy would pick it up. And they would always try to shoot the guy with the colors first. To his unit, 3 guys died. 2 of them's name was Wilson, that died holding up that flag in that particular infantry charge that he got wounded in March 29th, 1865, Battle of Five Forks. And just to give you an example of what other people behind us, before us, had thought of the American flag, I certainly love our country. And then, to this day, if our country went to war, I'd re-enlist. They'd let me. I don't want my son to re-enlist, but I would. But I think this country's in trouble because of the lack of understanding of what it takes to have freedom. Because we have a lot of enemies in this world, and it wouldn't take much that if we didn't have the oceans protecting us so they can't land on our borders easily, that we could have big problems of being overwhelmed. And they're letting so many people into this country daily, like 11,000 yesterday. That's a division is 15,000. So they're letting 11,000 a day, and I think there was 12,000 the day before that. We could have divisions of terrorists already in this country that are just waiting for the call up to mass over here and there, and they could take over whole cities with M16 type rifles. Who's going to stop them? Unless we got M16s. We got one division, 10th Mountain Division in Cape Fort Drum. That's the only thing saving upstate New York from being overrun. If all of a sudden there was a couple of divisions of terrorists taking over upstate New York, the cities, they could hold whole cities hostage. Because unless we got tanks or anti-personnel carriers and stuff, we're at the mercy of these guys with A-16s taking hundreds and thousands of hostages.
Yeah. For historical perspective, for the last, 2 years, since the current Biden administration took over, the borders have virtually been wide open. And there are many, many millions of people who've entered the country
unvetted.
Unvetted, and they're transported to virtually every city in the country.
Yeah, now they are.
Every city and state is a border state now.
Yeah, and they're setting up little cells, and all they need is M16s type rough weapons and a bunch of ammo, and they can take. There was 21 Arabs that took over the World Trade Center, took down the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. There's only 21 of them. Can you imagine thousands of them loose in our country? And who do they think's going to fight them? All these wimps and women and stuff. You think they're going to fight them? Oh, protect us. We better. Some of us better have guns, and we'll have to form our own little militia, because the 10th Mountain Division can't save the whole upstate New York.
Yeah.
We don't have that many divisions.
The Second Amendment right now is under attack, without a doubt. And it was quoted, a famous Japanese general said they feared invading the United States during World War II because they said there was a gun behind every blade of grass.
Well, I thought it was behind every bush, but
Same concept. And but we face many challenges. What would your message be to a younger person who's considering going into the service? And there's still a lot of patriots out there that are thinking about it.
if we're not at war, it's a great, possibly the way modern military is, it can be a great career. And if your heart's behind it, wanting to serve our country, it's very rewarding. But they're screwing that up, forcing all kinds of weird things and culture down our throats that it's just against the grain of, and we shouldn't have to worry about that. I don't want to go down into the different things that are happening, but we know what's going on with diversity and what they're doing to the military. I think about the Army and the Marines and having to suck it up. They're jamming it down their throats.
Yeah, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, transgenderism, there's a number of issues like this that the military is increasingly accepting, when you were in the service would never have been acceptable.
Yeah.
And that's what John is referring to here. Are there, as we're getting kind of close to the end here, are there any other things that you would like to add to the interview, things that maybe you can go all the way back if you need to, something you might have thought of that we didn't include? I want to be as complete as we can here.
Can I take a peek at my book?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, here's a good thing.
And John is referring to a book that he wrote and is published called Draftee.
Draftee, that's me. Torn fatigues and all. So I have a chapter, Lessons from Vietnam. I'd like to read the lessons. There's 5 of them.
Great.
Lesson number 1. Never ever force men to go to war unless you know you are right. Vietnam War was a lie. They lied to us. They found out after it that the Gulf of Tonkin was a lie. It wasn't. It certainly wasn't as they had said it was. And so we got into that war under a lie, and they continued to lie during the whole Vietnam experience about what was going on. And it's all about in Pentagon Papers and all that stuff. But the government continues to lie, and just about every conflict we got about Saddam having weapons of mass destruction and all that kind of stuff, it's just a mess. So anyway, don't be drafting men unless you know that you're right, that we're in deep doo-doo and we need men. The men and women in this country are standing by to volunteer for it. If we're really in a war, you're going to get tons of volunteers. At least I think you are. I know I would. I think there's still a lot of young men and women that would volunteer to write that check, because there's an expression that every soldier, when they're in the military, is basically writing a check up until including their life to the military. My particular family, the Wilson family, wrote checks for the Civil War and Vietnam. So my Wilson family did. So we know about that. If the absolute situation you need to draft, don't draft them until they're 21 years old. I mean, we're 19 years old. We're fighting. So you got kids fighting wars. That was bad. Put the draftees in non-combat situations. Well, that doesn't have to be, but you got plenty of volunteers to put in the combat roles and stuff, and leave the draftees with wives and kids to other scenarios. If the draftees flee to Canada, do not let them back in the country without going to jail for 4 years. Don't let them come back in the country unless for 4 years. These people took off to Canada, got off scot-free.
They all got amnesty eventually.
Scot-free. Scot-free. Make doubly sure politicians' sons are not exempted from the draft. There's 1.7 million got drafted. 684,000 went to Nam. Not a politician's son went to Nam. Drafted. Might have volunteered. They didn't draft. Keep the units together so they train together, fight together, and cope together instead of breaking up like they did. And I think nowadays they understand that and they're trying to keep them together. Last on that one particular lesson is don't allow the professional soldiers to disrespect the draftees because they treat us like crap, condescending. Until the day I got out, if you weren't regular Army, they still disrespected you and condescended to you. Lesson number 3, when our soldiers come home, take care of them. It's absolutely disgusting the way the government and the public treated our returning veterans. And the Vietnam veteran, not even so much as a little processing out interview. Can anything help you with, or can we get you training after you get out of the thing? They do now, and they seem to be more into it of taking care of the veterans coming back now than they ever did. Educate, this is the last lesson, educate the public that all soldiers are warriors. That at one point in the soldier's life, they wrote an open-ended check to our country for up to and including our life. And most of the United States has no idea that we did that. Because those of us that were in combat, especially in Nam, every hour of every day we were in harm's way. Even if the guy's in a big fort like in Tanzanite and Long Binh and stuff like that, they were still in harm's way. A rocket could have come in out of nowhere, or they could have got snipers, and they could have died, or a mine they ran over. But especially guys in combat that would have bullets and mortars coming by them all the time. So we're all warriors that we had open-ended check. We just accepted if we're going to die, we're going to die. We're fighting for our country.
And how many men did die in Vietnam? What is the approximate statistic?
58,300, thereabouts.
Mm-hmm. And untold thousands later on from suicide, induced by PTSD and other things.
And Agent Orange leukemia.
And Agent Orange, right?
Agent Orange. Killed a lot of us. Especially vets my age, from when I was 50 years old on, a lot of vets are dying in their older age because of Agent Orange.
Yeah.
Mostly leukemias.
How do you want the world to remember John Wilson?
I want him to remember as a patriot, and his whole family was a patriot that loves our country. That I'll die for our country again if I'm so called. I'll go. I'll fight for my country. It pains me to see that there's people in our country that don't understand what a wonderful country this is, and all the people that have died to give you this country. Do not give it away. They're opening our borders and giving away our country that thousands and thousands of, mostly men, have died for, to give you this wonderful country. Don't give it away. Protect it. I happen to believe there's like 2 types of people that are vocal in this world, in the United States. Those that are helpers, they mean good. They're wonderful, beautiful people, but they want to help everybody that's breathing. Okay, to an extent, but don't give our country away just to help people in Venezuela or something like that. And number 2, the other type of person is the protector. That we understand this is a wonderful country. We have borders. We have to protect this country from people there's a lot of bad people out there that want to kill us, that want to take our country, and we need protectors. I'm the type of guy that's a protector. My wife's the type that's a helper. Wonderful, beautiful people on both sides of that and such, but at least they're one or the other, and they need limits. But do not give our country away. But there's other people that could care less. There's one ear and out the other. They're not helpers or protectors. They're just takers.
I think when God created the heart of the veteran from the time of the Revolutionary War till now, you all have basically the same heart, the protector heart. You really do. Is there anything else you'd like to add as we come to the end?
No, I'd like to put a big positive thing out for Honor Flight, because Honor Flight kind of saved me. Gave me faith that there is people in our country that are honoring the combat veterans. Mm-hmm. And Honor Flight does just a beautiful, wonderful job of all the people involved, of going above and beyond, because it's not easy. The profound meaning of honoring our combat veterans.
And as we speak in 2023, they've completed, I believe, 19 missions, 19 or 20 missions. There's approximately two a year, with 80 veterans per flight, which goes down for the day.
It was one of the most magnificent days of my life, and I was never prouder to be an American for the tribute and honor they gave me that day.
You know, that was the homecoming that was 50 years late. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So as the witness to war, you've traveled far and seen much. And we thank you for your service.
Thank you very much for doing this.